Everyone, I'd like to welcome, this mic's really loud, can we turn that down? I'd like to call the meeting to order and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'd like to welcome you all to the Radnor Township School District regular business meeting. Today is April 23rd, 2019. Before we get underway, I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge the passing of a school board member, Susan Michelson. She's a former school board member who passed away recently, and I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge her. We'd like to send our condolences to her family on her passing. I'd also like to report that the board met in executive session tonight, April 23rd, 2019, to discuss matters of legal and personnel. And I'd also like to update that the board met on March 19th, and in addition to the other items we discussed last month, we discussed security. And with that, I'd like to have our report from our students. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. With spring break just behind us, I'll cover that exciting week of events first. The Radnor girls lacrosse team took a trip to Boston, Massachusetts to play games, tour schools, and just see what Boston had to offer. On Friday, April 12th, 40 girls from both varsity and a mix of JVA and B piled in the coach bus and took off for their 5-hour drive to Longmeadow, Massachusetts, where the girls played their first game. Varsity suffered a tough loss, but JV was able to pull out a win. Following the game, the players had dinner with the Longmeadow team and got to hear all about their high school, what Massachusetts is like, and where all of the college lacrosse commits were attending. Over the next few days, the lacrosse team played Notre Dame Prep and saw Tufts, Brown, MIT, University of Connecticut, and quickly drove through Bentley. There was a great opportunity to travel to Martha's Vineyard for the day and get to know the island just a bit during the 7.5-mile scavenger hunt. The team will compete this weekend at 10:45 a.m. against Unionville in the annual Katie Sampson Lacrosse Festival held at Radnor High School. Furthermore, on April 6th, the sophomore class enjoyed their sophomore semi-formal. As mentioned in previous monthly reports, the theme was outer space. Many hours went into decorating the high school, and it was well worth it. Student council and parent volunteers spent all evening Friday and all day Saturday hanging handmade 3D stars, planets, lights, and much more. But in the end, everything looked great. The live stream of the Final Four game on the projector was what many say was their favorite part. The sophomore semi-formal was the final event for the sophomore class government before re-elections in the coming weeks. As it is re-election season, senior Nick Camposano will be stepping down from the executive director position, while many junior candidates will run for the crucial position. Tomorrow during community period, the school will be hearing all of their campaign speeches. Presidents, vice presidents, secretaries, and treasurers will be reselected in the weeks to come. But as you know, Avery and I are lucky enough to assume this position until our senior year, so don't need to worry, we'll be here. Anyway, earlier this month, the high school, like the rest of the district, participated in Kindness Week. The video you saw last month was a part of Kindness Week, and in the video, the students read letters of appreciation and kindness to whomever they decided to write it to. This was actually a part of a state-mandated assignment that juniors had to fulfill, but I thought it was really creative to incorporate them into Kindness Week, and we all had a really fun time writing them. Over spring break, the softball and baseball teams went to Myrtle Beach, where they played in games, spent some time at the beach, and had some team bonding time. I know the boys' baseball team went to Dave & Buster's, so they all loved that. All in all, high school students have had an enjoyable and relaxing spring break and last month. Lastly, on behalf of all students, we would like to once again thank all the members of the Sleep Study and the board for the time and effort you have put into the advocacy of our wellness. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now we'll have a report from our superintendent, Mr. Batchelor.
Well, good evening. It's good to see everyone. Thank you for coming out, especially on a day with such nice weather. I have a very quick update because we have a few recognitions tonight, but I just wanted to share that it is National Poetry Month, and since it is National Poetry Month, I decided to share some poetry. I know board members are cringing and worried that I decided to write my own poetry, but I have done that before, and nobody has asked me to do it again. I was a little surprised. Mrs. Thompson's third grade class at Wayne Elementary received my last snow message, and I've been a little nervous because I didn't want to talk about snow days until we were well beyond them, and I feel confident that we are well beyond them now. But the last snow message, in honor of Dr. Seuss's birthday, it was right around Dr. Seuss's birthday. It was a 2-hour delay, and I did make an attempt at some poetry with that message. So Mrs. Thompson's class, I'd like to think, was inspired. I don't think it was a situation where they thought my poem was so weak that they felt they needed to give me guidance, but they took some time, and they all wrote me different poems of what I could use for a snow day. So much to I went and visited their class, and I don't know if a picture made it into the slide. It might not, if that's okay. But I went and visited the class the other day, and to thank them for the poetry that they had sent. And they were all very upset that it wasn't used and we didn't have an additional snow day. And I promised them I would save them for next year. So I am going to save them, Mrs. Thompson's third grade class. I will save them till next year, but I'll just share a couple of them. One was, "Gray day, Radnor. Anyway, I'm Mr. Bachelor. And I'm here to say you've got yourselves a 2-hour delay. Or was it a snow day? So snuggle up, lay or play, do it all your way. Just remember, come back the next day." I hope you like it, Mr. Bachelor, was the one wrote. One of the students who wrote her PS at the end of her poem, she had a nice long poem, but then at the PS she said, "Here's a little piece from my poem that I think the parents will like. Greetings, and parents, I'm sorry to say that there will be no school today." So I received what was nice, a whole folder full of different poetry, and I just want to thank again Mrs. Thompson's class for the time they spent and what they shared. The next thing I just want to share with the board is our upcoming events. With spring break being as late as it was this year, that we have a mad dash now to the end of the school year, and so you can see there is just so many wonderful things happening around our district. At the end of the school year, it's an exciting time for so many of our kids, an exciting time, obviously, for our seniors as well as we prepare to say farewell to one of our classes. Want to thank our donors. We have 2 donors tonight, both Kathleen Casey and John Giamucci, and they're Patient First for their donations. As I've shared before, it is the donations of the monetary donations, but the donations of time and effort that are given by so many in this community that keeps our district and makes our district so strong. So I just want to thank those donors this month. And that is all for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Bachelor. We're going to get right underway with some recognitions tonight. First up, we have Ms. Dunn presenting for the Radnor Elementary School Young Authors Project winner.
I was really excited to get this because I've known this child since she was very little. Radnor Elementary School student Meredith Gellis named Young Authors Project winner. Meredith Gellis, a 5th grader at Radnor Elementary School, was recently named a winner in the 2019 Nicholas Spinato Young Authors Project. She will be recognized at a ceremony on May 9th at Northley Middle School in Aston. The Keystone State Literacy Association's Delaware County branch and the Delaware County Intermediate Unit co-sponsor the Young Authors Project for students in grades 1 through 8. RTSD teachers review entries that are submitted from Radnor schools and then choose those to submit to the county competition. This year, a total of 42 RES students in grades 3 through 5 submitted written pieces for review. The respective works of 2 4th grade students, Andy Fisk and Shelby Graham, and 3 5th grade students, Meredith, Thor Bowers, and Anjali Padmawar, were selected to be submitted. The superintendent, along with the board and the Radnor community, congratulates Meredith, her teachers, and her parents on her outstanding accomplishment. You want to come up, Meredith? I have a certificate for you.
Okay, great. Next up, we'd like to recognize the Radnor Middle School Mathcounts team. Dr. Babson?
Okay, welcome. So the Radnor Middle School Mathcounts team proved hard work pays off when they won first place in the Pennsylvania State competition in Harrisburg on March 16th. The championship was the team's first in more than 20 years, 1996. Team captain Skylar Lee, an RMS 8th grader, also placed in the top 10 in the individual competition, 4th, along with 8th grader Lauren Yu, 10th. Skylar's finish earned him a ticket to the National Mathcounts competition in Orlando, Florida, from May 11th through 14th as a member of the 4-student Pennsylvania team. The team's coach, Thomas Lee, who's also Skylar's dad, who's also on the sleep committee, will also travel to Orlando as the coach of the Pennsylvania team. The other 3 students to earn spots on the Pennsylvania team are Vivian Lowe from Winchester Thurston School in Pittsburgh, Ethan Liu from Valley Forge Middle School in Wayne, and Thrisha Kalpati from Marshall Middle School in Wexford. The Mathcounts competition series is a national middle school mathematics program that promotes mathematics achievement through a series of fun and engaging B-style contests. The competition series has 4 levels of competition: school, chapter, state, and national. The superintendent, along with the board and the Radnor community, congratulates the Mathcounts team, members, coaches, and parents on this outstanding accomplishment. So what I'd like to do, I'll announce each member to come up. We'll hold our applause till the end. You just come up over here. So Skylar, if you could come up, please. Congrats. Stand here. Kaylin Lee. Charles Yang. And Lauren Yu. Let's have a round of applause for the Mathcounts clubs. Take the rounds here. Oh, yes, and of course, the coach, Thomas Lee.
Okay, for our final recognition tonight, we have the Radnor High School German students being recognized for their award.
Annabelle and Nora, you want to come up? Radnor High School freshman Eleanor Nora Graves and junior Annabelle Zhao were awarded all expenses paid summer study trips to Germany due to their excellent performances on the 2019 National German exam. Nora and Eleanor, no, not Nora and Eleanor, Nora and Annabelle, caught that right, are 2 of just 44 students selected from across the country by the National Committee of the American Association of Teachers of German, making this year the first time 2 Radnor High School students have earned the opportunity in the same year. For over 50 years, Germany has provided the AATG Study Trip Awards, a 3 to 4 week summer trip to Germany. To be eligible, students must score above the 90th percentile on the written portion of the National German exam and go before a panel of German professors for the speaking portion of the exam. As part of the award, students receive round-trip air transportation from New York to Germany, attend classes at an academic high school, live in homestays, and participate in various excursions to places of historical and cultural significance. The trip is made possible through a grant from the Federal Republic of Germany. The superintendent, along with the board and the Radnor community, congratulates these students, their teachers, and parents on their outstanding accomplishment.
Okay, so we are now going to get underway with public comment. Citizens are encouraged to address the board during the public comment portions of the meeting on the agenda or other topics related to the Radnor Township School District. We ask that you please print your name on the sign-in sheet at the table at the back of the room. Clearly state your name, your street address, and topic to be addressed. We do ask that you limit your comments to not more than 4 minutes as Board Policy 006. Should you be unable to attend tonight's meeting, you may submit your comment by email to boardcomments@rtsd.org or in writing to Mr. Michael Petiti, Radnor Township School District, 135 South Wayne Avenue, Wayne, Pennsylvania. Just in light of the number of people in the room, we would love to hear all your comments, but we do ask that you limit them to 4 minutes. And so with that, we'll get underway with public comment. Come forward, Jill.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
The microphone might, yeah, that one. There you go.
How's that? Okay. Hi. I'm Jill Fenninger. I live at 512 Askin Road, and I've lived in Radnor Township for 5 years. I do not presently have any children in the school system. I want to comment about the changing start time vote that's occurring tonight. So humor me for my 1 minute and 30 seconds. I instinctively wake up at 5 a.m. every morning. I love the dawn. It's my favorite time of day. I can afford to love it because I'm 66 years old, I'm retired, and I go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. That is my natural rhythm. But it wasn't always that way. 50 years ago, I was 16 years old, and I remember the challenge, the struggle of being awakened by my poor mother early each morning to get ready for school. I'm pretty sure that in 1969, my mother was not acquainted with the term circadian rhythm. Had I, back then, had the privilege of getting 1 more hour sleep in the morning, will they have done better in school? Will they have gotten better SAT scores? I'll never know, but I'm convinced I would have been more alert, more engaged, more present in my classes, so I don't have to have a child in the school system to know that this is the right thing to do. All this by way of saying to you, the members of the Radnor School Board, thank you. Thank you for wrestling with this. Thank you for your efforts and your hard work. Thank you to the committee for being trailblazers in what I hope will be the norm in the coming years. I am grateful for your efforts on behalf of the young citizens of Radnor Township. They and we are so lucky to have you folks at the helm. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go home and get ready for bed.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Oh, there's someone in the back of the room. Feel free to fill that out when you're done commenting. It's fine. When you come to the microphone, if you could just give us your name.
Yes, Chapin Lunfolk-Leary, a Radnor High School
Hi,
student.
Chapin.
Hi. In regard to the sleep study, based upon what I've heard from people, it seems that generally most people want this sleep study to pass, but people are also concerned that it may have unforeseen negative consequences. And I realize that there's a simple way to amend the bill to essentially reconcile both of these, and that is to, instead of, correct me if I'm wrong, but the current bill would have it such that if the school board approves it, it will be permanently approved, yes?
That's the intention, yes.
Right, and given that there are some concerns about this, the way to implement it and address those concerns would be to approve it for 1 year, but not to approve it permanently. That way, if things go wrong, the default would be that we'd return to the original schedule rather than continue on this schedule. That is to write the bill such that it lasts for 1 year, that you'd have to pass another bill to continue it into next year. Of course, that doesn't prevent you from continuing it into next year. It means that it essentially forces you to review how this year was before you continue it on further. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there any other public comment? Welcome, Annabelle.
Annabelle Zhao. Do I have to state my address or no? No? Okay. So I'd like to say, The question now is whether you are willing to take the risk of things potentially not working or the possibility that we can succeed and provide a better future for the students. As a member of the SLEEP committee, since 2 years ago, I've heard from friends and classmates all along the way that this will never happen. They had no faith that we could get this proposal to where we are now. Yes, there have been studies published on the widespread and harmful effects of sleep deprivation on adolescents, but there's a shocking lack of concrete action in this country and in the world on these studies. I am humbled to have served on this committee and to have discussion with so many knowledgeable people. The work this committee has done and the obstacles we faced as a community to implement this plan were large, but we did it. You may ask, why the hurry? And as a student here, I'll answer. Every moment we do not act, students and kids coming up and graduating are losing the opportunity to work to their body's best natural rhythm. I want to thank the board members for your careful consideration on this topic and urge you to please support this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Annabelle. Welcome.
Hi, Michelle Leonard, 852 Briarwood. I just wanted to say thank you again for all of you all and all the hard work and effort and time you've spent on this. And I would just like anyone who's here who supports the proposition to move our high school start time to later, please stand or raise your hand. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Welcome.
Hi. Amy Wishner, 15 Braxton Road, Rosemont. I'm a parent of 2 former Radnor High School students and certainly wrestled with the school start time as it is now, in particular swimming with the 5 a.m. barbaric practice before then. And so I know firsthand from my children how hard it was, and I think in particular the aspects of sports-related injuries decreasing when school start time is moved, teen driver accidents decreasing when school start time is moved, and mental health issues being improved really holds a lot of sway with me. My job is that I work for the Pennsylvania chapter, American Academy of Pediatrics, and I direct a statewide program on pediatric overweight and obesity. And the data, I know you've seen the data about the American Academy of Pediatrics support for this and all the many reasons, in particular, in terms of my work, the connection between sleep and obesity is very strong, and as we all know, that's a significant problem in our country. So the other thing is that because of the work I do, I'm in touch with a lot of school districts across the country. And similar to Unionville, what the overwhelming experience is of course there are issues. Of course people struggle with problems. But when the school start time is moved universally, the problems turn out to be less than anticipated, and the gains turn out to be significantly more than was anticipated. And I know you're familiar with the Unionville experience, which certainly is what their experience has been. So, like others, I really thank you for taking this topic so seriously, and I think we all recognize that there are trade-offs, that there are issues, the busing, the Penn Medicine opening, the traffic concerns. Of course, those are concerns, and no one's saying they're not. But what I think we are saying is that the gains would be so important and so worth it for us to deal with, and that some of the problems that we anticipate will turn out to be less than what we think. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have more public comment? Welcome.
I'm Owen Leonard. I'm a junior at Radnor High School. What I just wanted to say is that, as sudden as this may seem for a lot of us, the committee's been around for 2 years. We've seen the evidence. It's been presented here and at other places in focus groups dozens of times. And to be honest, there's a preponderance of evidence in favor of this proposal. I think that not supporting this proposal would honestly indicate some degree of ignorance to just the level of benefit that this can afford our high school students, but not just our high school students, but the elementary school students and middle school students that will eventually turn into high school students, which is an aspect of this that we have to remember. Because it's not coddling high school students or only benefiting high schoolers, but really benefiting across the continuum of Radnor students. And not only students, but by extension, their parents, their teachers, their community members. And I just believe firmly, and I think that we've seen that other people, the majority of the Radnor community also believes that this is something that's very important to us and something that we need to accomplish with the expedience that's outlined in the proposal we're voting on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Owen. Do we have any more public comment?
Hello.
Welcome.
I'm Aiden Laird. I am a freshman at Radnor High School, and I would just like to say my mother has been involved in this organization for a long time. So, round of applause. And so I've heard firsthand over the dinner table many times how passionate she is and how passionate many other people are about this issue. And I think, as my brother said, we're a family unit. The evidence to support this is just monstrous. It's incredible how much evidence and how much, just scientifically, how much benefit there is to passing this. And I don't think there's a need to wait. I mean, this committee has existed for 2 years. We've done research, we've proposed different plans, we've gone through so many different stages, we've gone through different plans. We've, garnered, as you saw when people stood up, so much community support for it. I just don't see the reason that you would delay it anymore. I mean, we have everything we need. And in my opinion, the current school start times are failing to meet the basic biological needs of our students to perform at their top level. And as the school board, I feel like it's you guys' responsibility to allow the students to operate at their best possible level academically, physically, athletically, whatever it may be. And the evidence shows indisputably that later school start times will positively affect academic performance, athletic performance, just overall welfare and well-being of Radnor students. And to me, I don't see why you have a reason to wait.
Thank you, Owen. Do we have more public comment?
Ms. Stern?
Oh, Mrs. Spurtle's coming forward, and then we'll take email. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening. Cindy Spurtle, 106 Valley Forge Terrace, Wayne. Gosh, it's tough to follow the positive vibe that you're getting on changing the start time. But getting back to reality, a few things that I'm usually concerned about in going through the slides that were presented or the information for tonight. The implementation plan. Cost. That yet has not been spelled out. There were some estimated costs on the plan that was presented in curriculum earlier this month. The one you've chosen, I believe, is somewhere around $120,000. But if that could be further defined. The other is with looking for 2 new bus drivers for the new program. The late start, does that mean 2 new buses? The next line says place order for buses after the decision is made April 23rd. I would presume that would be after the final budget is approved before a decision does that mean new buses? I've sat in where no new buses are needed. It all depends on the transportation. And I just had a quick question under the RHS implementation plan because I don't know about it, and most of these students can probably answer the question for me. Fitness for Athletes course. Just a further explanation on what that is. In the implementation plan, how important it is, and it's been mentioned every time this has been presented, follow-up to this decision and how key that is and how important. Follow-up from staff, because one of the reasons was to stop students, helpfully stop falling asleep in classes. So I would say feedback from the staff, feedback from the teachers is very important to have a definite program and plan outlined so that the public will know exactly how this program is being how well it is working or if it's not working. I understand there are some districts that have gone back to the old way. Very few, I understand, but there have been some. And once again, I've asked in the past about the homework study, and I know that's going to be worked into the wellness study. But I would think that right now with a change in the times that would be very important and should be one of the top policies that's reviewed and studied once this decision is made, if the vote comes in tonight. Getting into a few things on the agenda for this evening, just one question, and that was on the under financial reports. I noticed tonight that there were no longer any summaries of the revenues and expenses for the month. There's usually been a one-page summary that's been very helpful to members of the public to see how the school district is doing. Was that just a one-month omission, or I may have listened carefully or remember hearing someone say that was going to be discontinued? I would ask that it were not. If not monthly, maybe it could be on a quarterly basis so the public is aware of how the school district is doing financially. And as the minutes, going back to the minutes before they're approved, I just had a couple questions. And one was on the contract, the personnel contract with Dr. McGuigan. Normally when contracts are presented, there's either a statement of not to exceed a certain dollar amount, the term of the contract, or this is what the hourly wage of the consultant will be, and none of that was provided to the public when that decision was made to go ahead. And just one question, based on also the fact that Dr. McGuigan will be retiring in July. Just a quick question, has anyone reached out to Dr. Kelly Murray? That, I think, was a member of the administration I was sad to see go, and I imagine several members of the public and members of the Radnor School District were sorry to see go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Spurtle. Is there any other public comment in the room? Welcome.
Hi, Stacy Mandel, 727 Clyde Circle, Bryn Mawr. I wasn't planning on speaking, but I'm so inspired by everybody who's standing up and speaking. I just thought I would add my voice to the chorus. And I wanted to say that I'm actually really grateful for the work that's already been done and the genuine efforts of the district to really vet all angles of the sleep study issue. And I think it's like such a collective effort. They're saying it takes a village, and I think that schools, being an educator myself for so long, sometimes we think, like in schools, that we're at the mercy of like parents and our constituency, quote unquote, as our parent base, and we want to make sure that we're serving the welfare of our parents and on behalf of our kids, but also coming from behind the scenes of an education of schools, it's like you as educational leaders are in a position of leading the way, and it's your profession to be in this business of advocating for kids and educating kids, not just, we all know, in the classroom, but holistically, the whole child, the brain, the spirit, the emotion, and the physical body. And if we have great evidence that shows that this is a really big foundational, a piece of the foundation for kids for the rest of their lives, and we're in this position right now, or you're in this, I say we, because I still think I feel like I'm a teacher here, but all of my teaching, it's like, why not lean more into that? And somebody mentioned it before, I think it was a young lady, and another gentleman back there said, what about doing this for a year and then changing it later if it doesn't work out? I mean, that's the benefit of making well-rested, grounded decisions, is that you can always tweak as you go along. Nothing's permanent, nothing's set in stone. It's an evolving process, and as long as we keep communicating and speaking up and opening up to new ideas and exchanging ideas, I think everything will be okay. So thank you for all the really good work that's been put into this already.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Mr. Petiti, do we have some email comments?
Yes, we have 3.
Thank you.
The first is from John Sotheby, 704 Woodcrest Circle. I am currently a senior at Radnor High School. As a student, I've witnessed firsthand the impact that a lack of quality sleep has on high schoolers. Although it won't impact me personally, I sincerely hope that you will vote yes to later start times. This is from Roberta Winters. The decision before you regarding changing school start time at Radnor High School to 8:30 a.m. is probably the most important choice you will make it as an elected official. As you may know, it will impact the health and well-being of these youngsters in innumerable and significant ways. While many have worked on this initiative from the top down and the bottom up, I would be remiss by not mentioning students Lauren Yang and Jonathan Sotheby, who brought this issue to the board while they were mere freshmen. They are now seniors about to graduate. While this change has been a slow and challenging process, I look forward to allowing students the opportunity to sleep, dream, and mold the future before them. At the same time, I implore the board to continue to look at schedules, needs, and demands of all students K-12 in our district to promote access to the superior quality education they all deserve. And lastly, from Annie Webb. Dear Board and Superintendent Batchelor, I'm sorry I cannot attend tonight's meeting, but I wanted to add my voice in support of later start times for Radnor High School. I'm hoping that the board unanimously votes for this change and becomes a leader in our area for the health and well-being of our teens. I'm the mother of 3. My youngest child is a senior this year at Radnor High School. Meredith has been lucky this year in that she has had a first free on her schedule all year. This has been our own sample of on the later start time and has been excellent for her. She leaves for school wide awake and rested. I've raised 3 teens through the high school years and know that a later start time will be beneficial for all of our Radnor students. Although my family will not benefit, I cannot be more proud of the initiative of Radnor parents to study and educate the rest of us on this issue and of the board for thoroughly assessing the issue. Thank you for bringing this forward tonight. I look forward to hearing that this passed.
Thank you so much. Okay, so that brings us to the conclusion of public comment, and we're going to start with committee reports. Up first is curriculum. Ms. Solomon.
Thank you. The Curriculum Committee met on April 9th. There are 2 items on the consent agenda that went through committee. They are the overnight trip for the high school Sea Perch Club and the acceptance of the donation that's already been acknowledged earlier by Kathleen Casey and John Mucci. I'm sorry if I killed your name. To the Radnor High School Theater Department. Also at our meeting, we received 2 presentations, both of them by Ms. P.T. Kevkis. The first presentation was discussion of something that we're going to have at the high school next year, which is the Feedback Studio. Feedback Studio is an add-on to Schoolology that will function as a plagiarism checker, but also as a portal to assist students and teachers with developing writing skills. And the second presentation we had was a discussion on what the high school has done around the issue of equity. This has been a district priority, the topic of equity and excellence across the district. And the high school administration reviewed the multiple action items that have been put in place at the high school, as well as preliminary plans to expand this work to the K through 12 school community. And I must say that when we heard that presentation, a lot of board members were really touched by the caring work that's being done at the high school with regard to equity. Our next meeting for the Curriculum Committee will be May 14th at 5 p.m.
Thank you. Next up, we have the Facilities Committee report.
Sorry, I had to
Mr.
turn that
Miller?
on. Right, the last time we met, we had an update about the bleachers, and let me pull up the agenda here. Sorry, the West PTO folks came, and we agreed to fund the installation of a playground that they generously donated. We had a right at school contract for the aftercare, and we talked about the Radnor High School pool and auditorium upgrades that are going to happen this summer, and then we punted the draft capital plan to the Finance Committee meeting, which occurred right after.
Thank you. The April Finance Committee meeting was a committee meeting of the whole board. We had an update on the status of our budget. We are now intending to approve our budget at the end of June rather than the end of May, as our administration continues to work through bringing us to a balanced budget and assessing all of their needs for next year. In addition, we have a number of items on our board agenda for approval tonight. We have the Delaware County Intermediate Unit General Fund budget and our Delaware County Intermediate Unit Special Funding Service Agreement. We have a donation that Mr. Batchel mentioned earlier from Patient First, a generous donation which we appreciate. Also on our agenda for approval is the appointment of Mr. Chuck Madden as our Delaware County Intermediate Unit Board of Director representative. His term will start July 1st. Mrs. Booker has served for many years, and her term will be ending June 30th, and we thank her for her service. We also have on our agenda an item that we discussed in finance, but we will be pulling and tabling tonight, which is our substitute teacher vendor contract. Our next meeting, we actually don't have a May Finance Committee meeting. Instead, we're going to be having a special board meeting. That will be May 7th at 7:30 p.m. And for our policy committee, Mrs. Goldman?
The Policy Committee met on April 9th, and on the agenda tonight, you will see Policy 247, Anti-Hazing. It's coming for a second read and adoption. This policy was amended to comply with the passage of the October 2018 Timothy Piazza Anti-Hazing Law, otherwise known as Pennsylvania's Act 80. The expanded provisions of this new law needed to be incorporated into the policy. Nothing about this policy has changed since its first read at the March business meeting. Second, you will also see Policy 904, Public Attendance at School Events, which is up for a first read tonight. This policy was amended to make sure that it fully addresses the prohibition on tobacco and electronic smoking product use that we adopted as part of Policies 222, 323, 423, and 523 at the March business meeting. And last, we will be voting to approve the first read of Policy 225, Relations with Law Enforcement Agencies. This policy was revised to incorporate the Memorandum of Understanding that is in effect between the district and the Radnor Township Police Department, as required by Pennsylvania's Safe Schools Act. Language in the policy that repeated or conflicted with the Memorandum of Understanding was removed. Also, at the April Policy Committee meeting, we revisited Policy 239, Foreign Exchange Students. Some board and committee members had requested further clarification by the administration on how they had arrived at the proposed limits to the number of students outlined in the policy. The committee meeting resulted in consensus to go back to the original language of the policy that has a more general statement about limiting the number of foreign exchange students, since that statement had been meeting the needs of the district in the first place. That policy will be brought forth with the reinstated language at the May Policy Committee meeting for another first read. And last, the Policy Committee reviewed but does not need to approve changes to the administrative regulation for Policy 806, reporting child abuse. The administration needed to update the AR to reflect the current definition of child abuse. The revised administrative regulation, if it's not already, will shortly be posted to board docs. The Policy Committee will next meet on Tuesday, May 14th at 6:30 at the Administration Building.
And thank you. And now for our Government Relations and Communications Committee report. Will that be you or Mr. Madden? Okay, Ms. Goldman?
The Government Relations and Communications Committee actually did not meet in April, as we felt the time was needed that week to prepare for the meeting, our 6th annual legislative breakfast that we hosted on Friday, April 5th. The breakfast was a really wonderful event that featured our local legislators and was attended by several students, administrators, and board members, and we'll review it in more detail at our May 7th Government Relations and Communications Committee meeting at 5 o'clock at the Administration Building.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay, so now let's get underway with our priority discussion action item. And the first item on our agenda, as you are all aware, is the sleep and start school time item. So in order to move forward with this, what I'd like to do is state that the recommended action is that the board approves the recommendation from the Sleep and School Start Time Committee to change start and end times for all buildings effective in the 2019-2020 school year as shown below, changing the high school to 8:30, the middle school to 7:50, the elementary school to 9:07 a.m. What I'd like to do is entertain a motion and a second, and then we're going to have Mr. Bechtold give a brief presentation. We might answer a few questions, and then we'll have some board discussion. So, Mrs. Goldman, would you like to make that motion?
I would. I make a motion.
There you go. May I entertain a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second from Ms. Solomon. All righty, Mr. Bechtold, if you could come forward. He has a brief presentation for all of us. There's probably copies in the back of the room, or it's available online. And Mr. Bechtold, I'd just like to start by thanking you and your committee. I know Dr. Robarczyk is not able to be with us tonight. We wish him well. And thank you for all your work.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I have the opportunity to provide an update on the Sleep and School Start Time Committee's final recommendation. On the screen you'll see the final recommendation for the start times for the 3 grade levels here in the Radnor Township School District. I will point out and highlight that the high school start time of 8:30 is the first in southeastern Pennsylvania that will be meeting the recommendation of the major medical organizations. Subsequent to the March 26th board meeting, there were a variety of opportunities for community members and parents to provide feedback, and you see listed in front of you the various feedback sessions that we held with the parents in the community. In addition to this, we also had a number of responses that were garnered to the sleep@rtsd email address. A new Q&A page was created based off of the feedback from the community and the feedback sessions, and responses to frequently asked questions were posted for the public. Additionally, the district also released an updated addendum that outlined the details for the final recommendation. The administrative team met to go over the metrics for the evaluation. These metrics will solicit feedback from a variety of stakeholders. Our goal is to collect and analyze data with the impact of the change K-12. That will allow us to, number one, measure how we're doing, but also to be responsive as this rolls out to make sure that if we need to make tweaks or adjustments that we may do so. A comprehensive implementation plan was created to outline tasks, responsible parties, and timelines for the project. What you see in front of you on this slide and the next slide is a summary of this implementation plan. For example, I'll point out a couple different items from the implementation plan on each slide. You'll notice on there that the Transportation Department will be working with HR to post opportunities for the 2 new bus drivers. As we presented last month, the anticipated cost of $120,000 is based off of the salary and benefits of the bus drivers that will be needed to make the bus runs happen. Additionally, you'll see on there that we have a communication with the director of the Delaware County Technical schools. So I've already spoken personally with Dr. Karen Flew, who is the executive director. We actually have a follow-up call tomorrow, regardless of the outcome of the vote, to let her know where the district is going. And so those plans have already been started to take shape. Additionally, students in grades 8 through 12, we have a survey that we'll be issuing to them to determine how many students will need to be put into Fitness for Athletes. So an anticipated athletic participation survey will be in the works in the 2nd and 3rd week of May. One of the things that we heard from the community and also was discussion at the last board meeting was the need to analyze the pickup and drop off at the elementary schools. And so one of the pieces of the implementation plan will be for us to immediately start collecting baseline data for parent pickup and drop off at the various elementary schools, so that way we're able to see how it's working and give us an opportunity to look at the changes that may take place based off of this plan to change the times of the various schools. At the bottom, you'll notice the homework policy, which was brought up during public comment. Homework policy has been a key piece of this and the wellness study. And so this is something that we are planning through the implementation plan to look at. We're also looking at establishing healthy guidelines as part of the technology integration study. This is something that is an ongoing study, and that's a piece that is critical to this. In front of you, you'll see the high school bell schedule. So the high school bell schedule has not been changed since last month's presentation. I just included it in here to highlight this maintains a homeroom for all students and has restored the community period. This is the bell schedule that the high school will use next year should the board move forward with this vote. The Radnor Middle School schedule. Dr. Kent and the administrative team at the middle school have worked with a teacher committee to look at scheduling options. And what you see in front of you is the current middle school schedule. This scheduling committee has created 2 options to be considered by the administrative team, and they've submitted those to Mr. Rabarchek, Dr. Rabarchek, myself, and Mr. Batchelor for review. These options contain the 10 minutes that we're looking to cut from the middle school schedule and provides us some flexibility. The committee was very positive that these will meet the needs, either of these options will meet the needs of the middle school students. At this time, I would open it to any questions that the board may have.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Bechtold, I appreciate that. I don't, we had such a full discussion last month that what I'd like to do is just give, I think Mrs. Booker and maybe Mrs. Dunn were absent, were not able to be here last month, so I'd like to let the 2 of them start with some questions, and then we'll see if anyone else has any. Sarah, are you ready?
Yeah, I don't have a lot in the way of questions. I want to congratulate the sleep committee at the school, the community effort that rose up to create the effort in the schools, and all of my colleagues for thinking very thoughtfully about this. I think the administration has worked very, very hard, and there's been a lot of support, a lot of people involved in this progress and process, and I have appreciated both the negative and the positive feedback that we've heard. Not a lot of the negative feedback comes to meetings, but we do get it by email, and I think it's helpful to hear that this isn't something that is 100% something everyone in the district wants. There's also a large part of the district that is somewhat agnostic. Change it, don't change it, stop talking about it. Make a decision already. But I appreciate that this is a community that doesn't just make a snap decision. I think, to Chapin's point, we've thought a lot about it. We recognize that there are positives and negatives to this. And I think I want to say in advance, this is not going to be perfect next year. There are going to be hiccups, there are going to be challenges, there are going to be problems. But there are problems at the beginning of every school year. There are bus problems at the beginning of every school year. So I would just ask everyone to be open-minded. If there are problems, don't complain about it to your neighbor, call the district and let them know. Let Ken and his team know so that we can find a solution to it. Don't suffer in silence. Don't complain till it makes you miserable. Figure out a way to help us fix it, because we are all here to help this run smoothly. I also personally am disappointed. Sounds like one of those punishing terms my mother used, but I'm sorry to see that the elementary school was not able to be moved earlier. And I understand that a lot of that was a financial decision, which I think is important too as part of this process. But I do know that a number of the elementary school teachers are disappointed by the fact that we were not able to move that up. So I already think of this as kind of a pilot. I think this is a great starting position. I think we should see how it goes, but I think this is a fairly active administration and an active board. We don't do anything and just say, well, that'll run forever. I mean, I think we revisit things. So I would hope that along with those metrics, we consider, gosh, is this something that we're having problems with now at the elementary school? Is it worth an investment? Are there other ways we can make changes? Is there a way to push the middle school back to 8 or 8:30 and swap the elementary school to start around 8? I know we have a lot of challenges. I don't doubt that everyone has looked for every possible solution. And what I really respect is that the people of this community are looking to do what they think is absolutely best for our students. So, no, I appreciate all your hard work, Dan. I know Tony couldn't be here. I know he's done a lot of hard work on this too. So no, thank you very much for all your work.
Patty, did you have any questions?
I do, but I wasn't here last time, so I'm going to start off with a statement which I'm going to read instead of just ad-libbing it. So I agree that our kids are not getting enough sleep. It's a cultural problem, and it is pervasive across all ages. Recently, I participated in an executive training program, and the first day of homework was the assignment for the rest of the week was to get a minimum of 7 hours of sleep a night and to report on it the next morning. And it is something that I've kept in my mind ever since. Having 3 children who have since graduated from Radnor, we have experienced trouble falling asleep from time to time. But I believe that this thing that we're putting forward this evening is treating a symptom and not treating the root cause of the problem. We live in a culture of doing more, cramming in as much as possible into one day. Sorry, hold on, I just went too far. Here I am on my technology. Cramming in as much as possible into one day. Part of it is due to the advancement of technology. For our teens, it's the need to keep up with the latest BuzzFeed or Instagram or whatever the stuff is you all do these days. It's procrastination to turn your homework in online at 11:59 at night. There are a similar number of studies by medical professionals citing the impacts of light on the quality of sleep and the permanent impact that it has on the sleep rhythms. And this impact starts as early as infancy with the presence of nightlights in our children's rooms. Further, working for a global company, I have had the opportunity to poll many of my colleagues in the top-ranked countries, looking at if I look at the countries ranked globally, program for the International Student Assessment, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Switzerland, UK, and there's a whole laundry list longer, to understand more about what their school programs, from start time to stop time, the calendar days, and what their before and after school programs look like. All of these countries are higher ranked than the U.S., some of them by a significant margin. The U.S. is ranked 24th in reading, according to this PISA assessment. We are ranked 25th in science and 39th in math. All of these schools have similar things in common. They have more school time, longer days, and more days of school each year. I do not believe that changing the start time will address the root causes that have helped to disrupt our children's sleep rhythms. Further, I am concerned that we are taking adequate time to properly prepare for such a change. We have been struggling as a district to address safety issues for our bleachers for nearly 3 years now. And the process, and I'm being told that the process can't go any faster. But here we are implementing a major change of this magnitude in 99 days from this evening. There are a number of issues. When I look through that list that's up there, and I have to say I respect seeing that whole implementation plan, I actually do want to say I respect a lot of the work that you've done. But I just don't think that we're addressing the real problem. I believe that there's going to be a great deal of problems during that 99-day period of time, and I believe that we are rushing it. And while it's clear that my position is in the minority, it is not the only one I'm not the only one who has this opinion. There are many parents, some that are not willing to speak out in this climate. Just tonight I was called ignorant because I don't believe in what you believe in. That's a bit offensive. And that's why other parents don't want to stand up here and make the comments, in all honesty. It's not been an open environment for that kind of feedback. So I have questions. I have a number of them, and I'd really appreciate you can give me some sort of answers to any of them, and if you can't answer them this evening, I would like to hear what the answers are, even though I understand you all have the votes for this. So, timing agreement with St. Catherine's. When we built the middle school, we went back and forth with St. Catherine's about the start time of our middle school, and we adjusted our start time, as did they, in order to deal with all the traffic through the neighborhood. It was an agreement with the neighbors at the time when we built the middle school. Have we looked at that start time? What is their start time? I called them today to find out exactly what their start time was now. I knew what it was back then. But we moved our start time from 7:55 to 8 o'clock. That 5 minutes was a huge move. It took a lot of wrangling with our teachers in order to be able to make that move. And now we're going back to 7:50. So I'd like to know, have we had a conversation with St. Catherine's? Are we clear that we do not have an issue with traffic around the middle school at that start time?
Yes, Dr. Rubarchek spoke with St. Catherine's School and confirmed that they are understand that the change that we're doing, and that they are fine with it. Also,
Do you know what their start time is?
I have that. I don't have
Living
that in
on the
front of
street,
me.
I can tell you it's.
Yeah, you do live right there.
I do. There's two things I want to just share with you about it. They start right at 8 o'clock, so this actually gives us 10 minutes. But the bigger thing that St. Catherine's changed last year for reasons that had nothing to do with the middle school is that their drop-off now queues on the 300 block of Midland and not the 200 block. And it had to do with other traffic issues in the
things get jammed
so it
up.
actually, some of the congestion that was occurring in the 200 block of Midland has actually basically disappeared because it's now in the
They go the
300.
other direction.
They come from the other direction.
Great. Happy to hear it. Thank you. I noticed that in the bus drop-off time at the middle school, we had 20 minutes for buses to get in and out and drop off. We're down to 15. I'm sure you've thought about those implications as well. What's the feedback on that?
Sorry, I'm flipping through the
No worries.
previous month's presentation.
Yeah, I went through the presentation. I didn't see any information in there with regards to those answers.
All right. So your question regarding
So the drop-off time for the buses at the middle school,
okay.
the existing period of time for drop-off of the buses, according to your presentation, because I didn't know what those times were.
7:35 to 7:55 are the approximate bus drop-off times
Now,
under the
20
current
minutes.
schedule, and it's 7:25 to 7:40. One of the things that our transportation department did, based off of the feedback that they got from TransFinder, was they were able to make our bus routes more efficient, and so that's one of the reasons that you'll see a decrease in the amount of drop-off time that's available prior to the middle school starting.
So it's a function of the buses being able to get there, not the space that we have in the bus loop for dropping off the kids.
So if I'm understanding your question is, why do we have 15 minutes instead of 20 minutes? And it's not a function.
Does that have any impact?
It's not a function of the fact that the buses could not get through there in 15 minutes previously.
It
It's a
was
function.
getting them there.
It was actually getting them there to that location.
Okay. So, and the adjustment in the bus, never mind. I saw that you want 2 extra buses as a result of this, so I won't go down that path. Timing at the high school, and interestingly enough, Ken had addressed it earlier today in a short conversation that we had. I am concerned about the rush hour time. I know that Penn may say that they'll work with us, but Penn's not the only neighbor. And the majority of the traffic coming through there is actually making its way from the Blue Route up to the King of Prussia, and I can attest to that, having the fact that they go practically through our neighborhood on a daily. Lydia can speak to the same. So while Penn may be willing to work with us, I am seriously concerned about the traffic in and around that area. Based on today's road structure around the Penn site and even on the other site, the turning lane is not significant. There is going to be a turning lane. It's not significantly longer than it is today. So I don't see how, now I tried to go back. Speaking of which, I will make a request. I tried to go back and look at our high school construction project that we did around our high school parking lot and the changes that we did. And I could not find any of that online anymore. One thing that we did say in these meetings was that our online representation of these meetings and the meeting notes being left up online was part of the record that we had to the public with regards to these meetings, and we truncated our meeting minutes as a result. And I can't find anything earlier than 2015. So I'd like to request, sorry, that was a side comment. I'd like to request that we please reinstate the past meetings and all the information that was up on our site prior to us moving to board docs. They were all there.
Patty, side note, that has more to do with Mimecast, but we can talk about that offline.
Whatever.
MediaCast, rather.
Whatever it is.
That's fine.
It's a limitation. I would have pulled up exact numbers had I been able to get to the data like I have been able to in the past. But by estimation of pulling up the Schrader report and literally counting the cars, I am in the ballpark of 300 cars on site. Am I close?
Yes,
at the high school.
Yes, that's close.
In that ballpark of 300 cars on site. And we have probably another 200 cars come through on drop-off during that cycle in the morning, based on my personal experience going in and out of the high school. So for me, I am concerned about, call it 300, call it 400, call it 500, whatever that is, number of cars trying to get into that site at the same exact time as the businesses are all in their normal workflow. It's already a nightmare, as you well know, in the morning now, and creates a real safety issue for me. So I argue that that is not something that we should rush through. I think we need to see what happens when the Penn building opens and we see what the traffic really is. The traffic study, you guys know that I have stated this on multiple occasions, the traffic study that the township was using for the Penn facility and then we used for our discussions around this is significantly flawed because it is outdated information. There's a lot of construction in King of Prussia that was not taken into consideration, and I think we are just layering it on. I think it is seriously problematic.
Yeah, and as you and I had the opportunity to discuss earlier, I had the opportunity to meet now several times with the executive director who's going to be leading the Penn Medicine development in that site, will be leading that site. And in those discussions, we talked about, what would be the optimal times? What are going to be the times? Currently, we're going to have a traffic issue no matter what. We've discussed that as a board with the development that's taking place there. It is possible, and we looked at the consideration of their flow of traffic, that our time of moving our high school to 8:30 might actually be a better time than our current time at 7:30, looking at what their flow of traffic with their workers in, and then when they begin having patients visit. They are very welcome and open to partnering with us as a neighbor, to even open to the idea of maybe for some of their patient visits, when they send text message reminders to their patients, they're open to the idea of looking into whether or not they could send reminders to their patients that, high school dismissal time or high school start time is at this time. You might want to give yourself some extra time for that appointment or this appointment. So we do believe that right now in some of our discussions, and what I'm excited about is the opportunity we've had to meet to talk to them about what they believe their flow of traffic would be, what we see as our flow of traffic, that we're optimistic that our change of start time might actually be a better time. Time will tell, and no matter what, traffic is going to get worse there. We're hoping that the turning lane that's going to be put in, the light that's going to be put in, is going to help, offset some of those pieces. But they're all things that we're going to have to watch closely and continue to communicate.
Yeah, and I'll just appreciate that. I'm excited to hear that they're willing to work with us, but they're not the only ones there, as I stated. And they had caucus last night at the township meeting about the rest of the multi-purpose uses on that site that Penn will have no control over. So the hotel they want to build and a office complex. So I appreciate Penn's support. I hope that we can leverage that, but I would prefer to have that planned out and really see what it's about before we shove 500 cars and our kids trying to get in and out of the building. Oh, by the way, I'm guessing from my personal experience of being on the site, we probably have 10% of the kids arrive reasonably before, 20 minutes, 15 minutes before, and you probably have maybe 50% that come 10 minutes before. The last 40% of the kids are flying in that parking lot 5 minutes before class starts. And that's a hard, cold reality. And I don't know what we can change about that, but that's what happens, and I just think it's going to be hugely problematic. Other questions? I appreciate that part. I'll finish my wrap-up at the end. I'm on Bell's schedule now. I also appreciate, I guess, part of the presentation this evening, I appreciate that you're going to continue to look at where to get the 10 minutes out of the middle school. Middle school or high school, for me, taking any time out of the school day is not a fair trade-off. Start the day later, take time out of the school day. I struggle with that, whether it's 10 minutes or 5 minutes. We spent a lot of time looking at various programs as we introduced new programs. We looked at the elementary school and changing the bell schedule so the kids had more time in the classroom. And we could, finding 5 minutes was near impossible, and now we're talking about taking 10 minutes out of the day. And I understand that we'll look at ways of doing it where it's not in a direct class, but if we take 5 minutes out of advisory, that means what to the music program? Already the middle school program is struggling with music. We've got band, orchestra, and choral rehearsals that are all happening during advisory. We shorten it up. I also am interested to understand what will happen with the jazz. There used to be a before-school jazz program. I'm not even sure if that even exists, because we're struggling to get and keep kids involved in our music program.
Understand, your question is about, you're concerned about taking away from class time. You're not as concerned about some of the adjustments that were made at the high school where in passing time was reduced.
I still
and
think you're
homeroom.
going to have trouble with passing time, but the high school
Okay.
kids, it's a little bit different.
But you would like to try to see any adjustments avoid instructional time and the instructional time that exists in either day.
I think any impact to instructional time is not acceptable. I don't know how to say it any more clearly. Not acceptable.
And I, we've talked about this. I think Patty and I agree. There are places in the middle school schedule that seem pretty obvious. You could take 10 minutes off the end of the day for packing up school bags. That wouldn't touch any of the classroom time. I think it's also really important those kids have a short lunch period, not to touch their lunch period. I've heard that from a number of them. That's the one break they get in a day, and to take time from that would be tough. But I think that end of the day period that's extra long, in order to allow for packing up of bags, I think could be pretty easily cut.
Next, I'd like to understand what's the implications with regards to any kind of employment contracts?
So we've looked at that piece very carefully, and there are no implications.
So they have 10 minutes less in classroom time or less time in the building, and there's no adjustments to contracts?
So our employment contracts for our teachers do not stipulate a start time and an end time.
Right, they just have a number of hours in the day.
Correct.
Right, so
Correct.
you're reducing the number of hours in the day.
So we are reducing the number of student hours in the day. We're not
Okay.
reducing the number of teacher hours. So that is one of the advantages as well. In the reduction at the high school and also what we're looking at the middle school, though we're trying to look to tighten up the student day, it's going to provide some more opportunities for planning time, planning for feedback, planning for reaching out to parents. That is an advantage and a positive that will come out of this as well for our teachers.
So that'll just be built in as some sort of a attachment and agreement that the time is to be used for those types of things?
Correct, yeah. The actual teacher day currently will not change. The time they have to work will still stay consistent.
Scheduling of the 8th period, I guess I read in one of the reports that for students that have a sports program that they would be able to get a gym credit or whatever you were calling it, a phys ed credit, which is something that we've actually talked about for a number of years. I think we pointed to TE's been doing that for a really long time, and there's always been call from parents saying, why does my kid have to go to gym class? So I don't really have a problem with it, but I am trying to get my head around how many kids will be able to actually, from a scheduling point of view, be able to be in a real gym class at the end of the day, if they're all doing sports. I mean, how will we manage that?
So we went through and identified the sports that would need to be released. There's certain sports that don't need to be released.
Mhm.
Wrestling, girls basketball, boys basketball. There's a number of sports that have competitions at 7 o'clock at night.
Mhm.
So what we did is went through and identified the sports that we would need to have be out. Easy example, something like golf or crew that is off-site. So we identified all the athletes. We cross-referenced for every athlete that we have fall, winter, and spring this year, and then we looked at the total number of sections that we would need to run. We'd need to run 10 sections of PE to make this work. So one of the things that we talked about in the implementation plan is going through and having a survey for grades 8 through 11, so we'd identify the students who are playing the specific sports that we need to hand schedule them into 8th period next year into the Fitness for Athletes course.
How many did you say there were, roughly?
10 sections. About
10 sections.
10 sections. And currently we have 9 sections in period 3 this year that we're running of a PE class, so we knew that we'd be able to get that done with our current staffing and the constraints that we have.
Okay. Moving on then, since you brought up the use of the gym space, et cetera, by others in the building, I'm interested to understand what restrictions have been created with regards to any of the sports activities.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Are there any restrictions? Are there any programs?
You mean prior to school, or do you mean after
No,
school?
either. Whatever. What are we doing? right? Because the natural flow is going to be to want to do practice in the morning.
Correct. So that's one of the things that the committee spoke about. I actually had a conversation with Dr. Judith Owens when she came here. So historically, our swim team has practiced in the morning. We actually went through and mapped out how many times that they practice in the morning this year. The practices are anytime between 5:15 and 5:30 in the morning. And the committee wrestled with it. And one of the things that we said was, that I asked Dr. Owens was, what are we going to do with swimming? Because this is something that they've practiced. So we had members of the committee that thought we just cut it and we say, we're not going to allow anybody to practice before school. And other members of the committee thought we could push it back. And so I asked her, and ultimately, our goal is to get every student an additional hour of sleep. And so we're going to have the swimming and diving teams, which practice 1 day a week. They rotate it. So boys swimming does 1 day a week, girls swimming does 1 day a week, and diving does 1 day a week. They're optional practices, and they would begin at 6:30 instead of between 5:15 and 5:30. So those students would also realize the additional hour of sleep that their peers have got. In addition to that, we talked about making sure that we don't have clubs, activities, or sports that go and decide to move their practices before school. So no club, sport, or activity would be permitted to move their practices before school without my approval.
And I don't think that that's one of the things we've talked about and looked at, that, what will happen to after-school athletics and activities, and will there be a natural flow for people to want to have something in the morning instead of after school? Because the way we set up the schedule, that it's only a 40-minute extension at the end of the day and it's an hour in the morning, we don't think that'll be necessary. One of the other really great conversations that have come out of this, and this is, I thank our teachers and our coaches, have talked about, our teachers have come to us, practices shouldn't be more than 2 hours. And I wholeheartedly, as a former coach, would agree to that. And that we need to look at and that's a discussion we want to continue to have, but we should have no problem having our practices still meet after school and they will still be off our fields. Right now, currently, our youth sports get on our fields and use our fields starting at 6:15. We will still be able to honor that time and still have plenty of time for our high school athletes to have the ample practice that they need. So I don't think there will be a natural flow of people wanting to have their practice in the morning.
So you will establish some AR or something around not having those things happen in the morning without approval?
Yes, we are committed to not having practices or activities prior to school.
Okay. Are we going to update ARs?
Well, we actually don't have an AR now that stipulates that, so I don't know that we necessarily need to create an AR. We can certainly talk about that. But I think what has been one of the really, good discussions is talking about, another piece that came up is, what time should our school activities be ending in the evening? I really appreciated the teachers that came to us and said, as we're looking at this, sometimes our students are at activities past 9 o'clock. I think we should talk about, as a district, making sure that, we shouldn't have our students on campus beyond 9 o'clock. What things are existing student-wise? I'm not talking about the community use or the adult use of our facilities after 9 o'clock, but, we should talk about when we should be ending student activities. And I think these are discussions we can have that don't necessarily require an AR as much as administratively the board have some discussions as we move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't have a problem with that. I think it's probably a pretty good idea, so long as our high school programs are being given the priority. Yes. And that youth sports or other people running our facilities are not being able to use the space. If we have a high school related team or club or whatever that needs that space, they should get the priority. Even if it means we drop our rental fees or drop in rental fees. I appreciate that, but with that comes those kinds of things we're going to need to, and that's why I think we need an AR or something around
Well, it's something we currently do right now. I mean, currently our school activities take precedent and, will continue.
Okay, so other than swimming, there's really no other special dispensation or whatever for other teams right now?
That is correct.
What about crew?
Crew doesn't practice, but they practice after school.
They do. I didn't know when they, okay.
I was thinking about doing early morning administrative team meetings, though, but no.
Team one. Are there any programs getting displaced with doing this? I mean, I don't know what the overlap is with some of the sports. Are there any
programs that are getting displaced?
Because they're having later practices, one's pushing
No.
one back, that's pushing another back?
No, we have a buffer built in between our athletic events and the community use of our fields, and there's nothing being displaced.
Okay. And there's no other changes to the use of our facilities that's being discussed at the high school? I've heard rumor of a couple of things, and I just wanted to be sure. Nothing else that's tying to this or
Not that
even
I'm
separate
aware of.
from this about the use of our spaces?
Again, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right, so the one was about getting, my last one on that topic was about the school teams getting priority, whether it's gym space, field space, or otherwise. What about things like Lower Merion, LM Week, and musical prep, and the musical? Those things all run well into the 9 o'clock. Are these all part of whatever rules we're going to come up with?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of that discussion we need to have. We need to look at what are those things that are happening after 9 o'clock at night and talk about that and first understand why it's happening and then look at, what are the ways that we can avoid that. Because as we, put a focus on, our students' well-being, a focus on our students achieving academically, I mean, that's what they're there for. Let's make sure that we're not planning activities that are getting in the way and inhibiting. And sometimes there's a lot of good intentions that create unintended consequences. So yes, we'd have to look at all of those programs as well.
So is that something that's going to come back? One thing that sticks in my mind, and Susan and Lydia and Julia, having kids gone through the music and the band program, right? We're all pretty familiar with the amount of work and the time that they spend practicing. We're also very familiar with there's kids that are on sports teams that are in the band. And if we make things prohibitive for the band, or even for those kids, does that impact our music program? So
It should not. So I actually had a conversation last week with Mr. Drew. I had a conversation last week with Dr. Glennie about a 9 o'clock cap and how that would be structured. So those conversations have already started. They do pull a lot of students. One of the things that's great about Radnor is we have students with diverse interests, and they have a lot of athletes that participate in the band or the theater or the musical program. So those conversations have already started, and we do not anticipate that that's going to be an issue with this.
So is that stuff coming back to either the facilities committee or the curriculum committee? Where are those details going to be
I think those
discussed, agreed upon?
It'll be part of curriculum as we move forward. I mean, all of this also fits under the larger umbrella. The board had set a goal this year to look at student wellness, and we will be starting that, kicking off that conversation in the next month about looking at just the data this year about our student wellness. So under that umbrella of student wellness, we'll continue to have those discussions, and it'll be most likely through curriculum committee.
Okay. Which actually will lead me to my next question, takes me off of my my questions around the bell schedule and the facilities use. And I'm going to move now to the homework policy. And I definitely heard you say that's up there and pointed that one out as one of the implementation activities that needs to get done. But I guess I'm just going to express my concern around the homework policy. We spent over a year working on that homework policy, and we were not able to really bridge the hard gaps. And I'm interested to understand how we're going to do that in this short time frame. Quantity of homework, quality of homework, how homework is to be done, whether it's punitive if kids don't do it. Like, there were some big things in that home. You guys remember that? Like, the homework policy came before us 4 times, 5 times over a year's period of time. So I'm concerned about how we're going to get that done before the start of the school year.
We're not looking to get that done before the start of the school year. So the piece with the homework is that topic throughout the work of the sleep committee, that question has come up. As we've looked at wellness this year, that piece has come up. This district, we approved 2 years ago a homework policy and a homework administrative regulation that's been in place for 2 years. Our recognition now is that now that it's been in place, it's time for us to set up a committee to look at this, to look at it and understand, first off, has the work that we did 2 years ago to put this in place, how has it played out? What was our intention with that homework policy and AR? Looking at what is our intentions, how has it actually been realized, and what has been the actual implication, exactly what you said. So this is a longer study, something that we need to dive more deeply into that can begin this summer and go into the fall, into the next school year for us to look at this as a district. I think it's timely for us to do it, just based on the fact that the policy has been in existence for 2 years, that it's time to look at and say, did this really have the impact that we thought it had? You know, I will be, you know, some people have come to me and said, oh, you're going to look at homework, you want to cut it down. I actually have to say, you know what, my theory on homework is we have students who I know are doing too much, and I know we have some students who aren't doing enough. So I think this is a multifaceted discussion. There's a lot of pieces to this discussion as we look at homework and we look at our current policy. So I think it would be really good for us as a district to take some time to look at that current policy, to spend some time talking about with our staff, and this is an exciting opportunity, what is the purpose of homework? What do we use homework for? How is it achieved? I haven't met a teacher, and I'll put myself in these shoes, who, you know, I was a high school teacher teaching high school courses, and it wasn't until I had my own children that I stopped and looked at homework a little bit differently and the types of homework I was assigning. And I haven't had a teacher who hasn't had that realization with those types of homework they assign. I think as a school district, it's good for us every couple of years to be looking at that and look at our homework use and why we do it and how we do it, and take an opportunity to look to make sure to see if this is an area we can improve upon. So it won't be something done by the start of school year.
Mr. Batchelor, not to interrupt, but whether it was last month or one of the other meetings we've had about this, I think one of the things that we talked about is that the science is suggesting that perhaps if our students are better rested, they'll actually be able to complete their homework more efficiently. And so that may even be part of the conversation about, quote, looking at homework is, are we seeing them able to do it more efficiently and effectively, you know, if they are better rested? And that's part of that conversation. I can't remember which meeting we were at.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that's been a compelling piece of the research from looking at the districts that have made this change. The efficiencies that the students found in their lives has been a compelling piece of this.
Questions around DCIU and the technical school, obviously. I'm interested to understand that, have had my own conversations internally, especially since the majority of the districts in Delaware County are not going to be able to afford additional buses or whatever to make these changes. So we're likely to be the outlier in Delco anyway. There may be 1 or 2 or 3 that join, but certainly not all 15. So I would not expect to see DCIU or the technical school programs change, at least not in the short term, maybe even not at all. So in the discussion, I know you said you had one conversation, or you started conversations maybe with them. Correct. So what are the implications around that?
So this year we have 24 students that are attending VOTEC. 9 of them will be back next year. 15 of them are graduating. 4 of them are in the afternoon sessions, and 20 of them in the morning sessions. So we do have the flexibility in Delaware County to have AM and PM sessions. Of those 24, 16 of them are actually VOTEC, and 8 of them are in the medical careers program. We went through and looked at the number of students that have applied, because at this point in the year you have to apply for next year. We anticipate that the 9 that are currently doing it this school year will be returning, but then we're also looking at the number of students that applied both for VOTEC and for the medical careers program. We came up with scenarios that would allow students to go either AM or PM for the program, and so the conversation that we're having with the follow-up conversation we'll have with Dr. Flew tomorrow is based on, if the board approves this, which one of the 2 are we going to go with and how are we going to roll that out? And if they don't, we're going to continue with what we're currently operating under.
Which is
Which is primarily our students going to the AM sessions.
DCIU schedule.
Correct. Well, there's AM and PM sessions.
Oh, no, I understand, but I mean that they're not a later start time. Their start time is?
Correct. There's AM sessions and PM sessions that they offer with programs. So if the board would approve this, then we have 2 options to either meet their needs, AM or PM, and if not, then we're going to continue doing what we're doing this year.
Okay. I'll be interested to hear the outcome in that.
If you look in the original sleep study presentation, there's a student schedule in the back that shows, we actually mapped out exactly what a student that would go to the CTC, what their schedule would look like.
Okay, I'll look at that. I did not see it. I only have a couple other things, and I'm going to wrap up. Actually, I guess I only have one other comment, is that I appreciated seeing the list of metrics that you had up there, and the plan of going back and taking a look at the metrics. Do we have a baseline for each one of those items that we already had, that you have on the list?
We do, like our data system, our eSchool system has discipline, attendance, has all the nurse visits. It has, we're able to pull those things up. We also surveyed our students last year using the metrics from the University of Minnesota study, and so we have that, and we're looking to reissue that for this year, provided the board approves this. So we will have all of the metrics necessary.
We'll have baselines before the school year starts.
That is correct.
Okay. I will look forward to seeing them as well. Okay, so
I just jump in on the metrics too. We're going to have to, as we look at the metrics and we look at anything that we change in our school district, we don't operate in a vacuum. We're constantly trying to improve so many things all at once, which is wonderful. So if we see improvements in student tardiness, is it because of a change in school start time, or is it because of the hard work? We heard a presentation on an equity and excellence program and mentoring programs that are happening at our high school. And is it the mentoring program that's having the impact to have a student feel like they have more of a place in school and they're willing to show up on time, or is it the school start time change? We just saw our national merit semifinalists for we just got information our current juniors has gone up by 33%, which is absolutely phenomenal, incredible for that class. If it was this time last year, I'm sure there was somebody who would sit there and go, wow, it's the extended sleep, look at that. And I think we have to be very careful of that. We have to be very careful on both ends of this metric piece and on how we look at it. For me, one of the most telling pieces will be the focus group discussions with our students, with our parents, to talk about what kind of impact this change has had. I think is going to be some of the most valuable information for this board and for the community.
thank you for that. So for me, this really comes down to nature versus nurture or environment. I look at this as no different than a daylight savings time bump in an hour. And within a couple of days, people get adjusted and you're working right back to the schedule. So my biggest concern is, unless or until we actually take something out of their day, whether we as parents take the responsibility to be sure that our children are taking something out of their day and getting to bed on time, and I know people will say, well, they can't fall asleep. I've had 3 children. I understand how this all works. I'm not sitting here, I'm not ignorant. I actually am informed. And I just disagree. And I just think that this is not going to be the end all that you all think that it's going to be. You'll see some improvements. Some kids will be better than others. Some kids need it more than others. Kids are not all at the same place. We all know that. A kid in 8th grade may need more sleep than a kid in 12th grade does. And we aren't doing anything for the 8th graders. In fact, we're making them earlier. And the elementary school kids, I mean, I guess it's really under 13. We're not addressing the guidelines that have been put out now with regards to that. Internationally, I am concerned about where we are as a country and where we rank in the world in our educational system. And I don't see this as the end-all solution that you guys believe that it is. And I'm mostly concerned about the implementation. That's the engineer in me. I concede I'm a big minority in this discussion here tonight, and you're going to move it forward. But I highly recommend that we don't rush this. If we can't put bleachers in 3 years, what makes us think we can take this level of change and implement it without very significant problems? We have massive changes happening on the site across the street from the high school. We don't know what that will bring. Penn can promise all they want, but they can't control all the King of Prussia traffic and all the other multi-purpose, as well as the other buildings that are popping up, or Brandywine is filling and doing all their stuff. So I appreciate that they want to be a neighbor and a good partner with us, and we'll take all the help we can get. But it is my recommendation that you guys do not rush this, that you should take the time, see what it's like when that building opens, and really understand what the implications are before you rush this through. And deal with all these other things. We said we need to fix the homework policy. We need to look at DCIU. We need to look at what our sports program is going to look like. We need to look at how we're going to do the scheduling. I think you guys are rushing this. I think it's the pressure of a few voices in the community, albeit you guys are important voices. You're the parents of our kids, and I fully respect that. But there are a lot of other parents that are not in this room, and their voices are not being listened to. And you guys all already made up your mind, so I just need to make sure I expressed where I stood. Thanks very much.
Okay.
I just wanted to, thank Patty for that and just say that administratively, I just want you to know that we don't feel rushed and we don't feel pressure. We have on many issues a lot of competing voices, and the one thing we have done and taken a great deal of time with this topic is to hear all of those voices. The plans and the pieces that have been developed and the recommendations have been because, it's been a year and a half of a committee working and looking at it. So that's why I don't feel at all that it's being, rushed at this time from an administrative perspective. And the biggest piece has been for our transportation department. Can our transportation department be ready for the fall? And, our transportation department can be ready for the fall and doesn't see any benefit at this point, in putting this off for a year. Many of the pieces, though, I think your points are very, very well taken, and I think we have to be mindful that this is not a panacea. This is not a panacea that's going to solve all of our problems. This has to be looked at in concert with many other pieces and continue to look at as we look at the mental health of our students. The piece I struggled with this, and I was right with you, Patty, with this, I really struggled in the beginning with where does that hour go? It's got to go somewhere. And I was really surprised and stunned to learn as I looked at the studies and looked at the research of the places where this happened, and I finally sat with Dr. Owens and I said, Dr. Owens, you got to explain to me, where does the hour go? As a parent of 6 and I see this, where is the hour? And Dr. Owens talked about how the only way they can explain in the studies is that they look at the efficiencies that the children wind up having, the kids wind up having during the school day. And that the efficiencies they have because they are well rested. So that is something we're going to want to continue to watch, and look at. But it was stunning to me to see that students who, in the research, when schools changed their start time, they still went to bed at the same time that they had previously. Things didn't just move an hour later. Anecdotally, talking to my children, talking to seniors who have the golden ticket, we talked about this last month. When I talk to students, I say, okay, you have the ability to come in after first period. Are you staying up later? And the students anecdotally are telling us they're not. They don't just stay up later. They don't just push that hour later. So that's something we're going to want to monitor and watch. But it was interesting to me and fascinating to learn that.
Right, but I've talked to other kids. I mean, obviously, kids are involved. I'm involved in a lot of programs with kids, and I've talked to a lot of kids over these 2 years, and that is not what they say to me. They say to me, I'm just going to do what I always do. I'm staying up, I'm doing my stuff, and this is not going to change my habits. So anecdotally, we'll see. Yep. But I also, I'll be interested to understand where other systems have had their issues, maybe started this and stopped this, because it didn't have the impact that they thought.
I think that is the sign of a strong district, is our ability to do things, to change things, and then reflect upon it. And I think we have to be, one of the students talked about that, and some of the public comment talked about it. We have to evaluate it, whether we're evaluating it because, as Sarah commented, it's an evolutionary process in it, or we're evaluating it because, oh gosh, this hasn't had the outcome, or we need to make a change, or this hasn't, provided what we thought. I think we need to be able to have that conversation. I think that's a good point.
So one question I'll ask, my last question actually. I wasn't going to ask this, but it did dawn on me. I've asked this question before, and I don't think I've really gotten an answer that I feel comfortable with, and now this actually heightens my concern. And that is the traffic study around our facility. And rather, hope is not an answer. We need to know what is really going to happen. The traffic study that we have is not accurate to today's world of what's going on. In this 99 days, is there any reason we should not be planning that? Do another traffic study of today's real world, what's really happening around our traffic, our site, and then add on to it whatever Penn says they expect, and see really what the impact is going to be at that time of day. I think we should know this. I don't think this should be trial and error.
So one of the things that I'll say is that the transportation department has been working to run routes, and they've run more than 36 routes during the times that we're looking to run these. And so that's one of the ways that we work to try to make sure that the bus routes that we are planning to run, that that we're running them during the time that they would be running next year.
And I appreciate that, but I want to know around the high school. I want to know about the 500 cars that are coming in and off that property, in addition to the traffic we currently have, plus what Penn's going to add. I'd like to see that modeled. I'd like to see someone do a real traffic. I appreciate we're looking at the buses and all that stuff, and I think we do great stuff with that.
One of the things we did do.
There's nothing stopping us from doing a traffic study.
Correct. And one of the things
By the way, last night, I'm sorry, the township manager's response to this was, it's the school district's problem, just so you know.
Yeah, so we did obtain the traffic studies that the township, did in those areas. We discussed that, and we
They're
looked.
old, outdated.
And then we shared those traffic studies also with our consultants, TransFinder, who we worked with our transportation as well. And that's why we're reaching out now, to Penn Medicine and talking to them about what do they anticipate, for their traffic patterns. So yes, we will continue to do that and continue to model that as best, to our ability.
Okay. So Sarah and Patty, who were not here last month, and as I said, I wanted to kind of give them an opportunity, first crack at asking questions. Dan, you're being,
Thank you very
patient, standing here a long time. Before we get into board discussion, because I do, think that we need to do that, I just want to make sure, are there other board members who have questions? Just only so that if our questions are done, we can let Dan sit down but I want to make sure that board members have an opportunity, if we have any follow-up questions from last month. I do know that we did the additional feedback, sessions, the updated pages, so, we've received our updated PowerPoint. Do we still have outstanding questions for Dan?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
Would you go to the metrics slide, please? Thank you. Somebody? Okay, you don't have to put it up, it's okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. There we go. So my first question is, I have to say, when this plan first came in December, and there were still a lot of loose ends that were left open, and the committee came back with answers to the loose ends. It was really wonderful. I was very happy to see that. And we're acknowledging that we know there are going to be issues going forward. There has to be issues going forward that we can't foresee, and we will deal with them when they arise, assuming this passes. My question is, are you going to disband the committee? Because they've been so effective in dealing with issues. I would hate to see them disbanded for this year, and can we hold on to them? Would they be willing to stay on to work out kinks?
Yeah, so that's actually the plan, and for the committee members that are here, they're actually built into the implementation plan for the summer to help us create some different things as far as like the healthy sleep tips, and so we are not intending to disband the committee.
Okay, but I'm not worried about the summer. I'm worried about the kinks over the next year.
It's not our intention to disband the committee.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm looking at this metrics for evaluation. I see this list, and I'm concerned about down number 4, evaluate impact of school schedule changes at RMS and ES. I assume all of these factors would be evaluated at the middle school and the elementary school. Shouldn't they be?
I think that's a good question. I think that the greatest change that we're seeing with the start time is at the high school. One of the goals that we talked about as far as the metrics for the evaluation was surveying parents, looking at traffic flow, looking at a variety of different things for the middle school and elementary school to make sure that we are getting a full picture of how this is impacting K-12. Some of the things I can't say that every single thing that's on that list we were planning to do K-12, but we are certainly evaluating the impact of the schedule change on the middle school and elementary school.
And that's something we can
Wouldn't
also
we
put
look
part of
at
our
it
wellness.
by
Yeah.
measuring these metrics? It just makes me very uncomfortable seeing that. It makes me feel, I'm sure we are not disingenuous when we say we care about the middle school and elementary school, but when there are a line in there as opposed to the entire district looking at all of these metrics across, how would you look at the impact on schedule changes? You'd look at student survey, parent survey, you'd do this.
So many of these things are things that are going to be part of that wellness study that we're looking at. And as we look at the wellness and gathering that data, much of this data is what we're gathering as part of wellness, that we are looking at K to 12. So certainly we could look at that. The reason for that line being the way it was there was concern that, yes, does the 7 minutes and 10 minutes have an implication on nurses' visits and tardiness and all that? I think would be, good data to follow. But a lot of the concerns were about drop-offs and pickups, and the impact that it was going to have at the elementary level on drop-off and pickups has been some of that focus. What is the impact at the middle school with that 5-minute difference with the pickup for the students has been some of the focus. But we could certainly look at that, especially as we look at wellness next month.
Okay, but critically for metrics for evaluation, if we're going to be looking at before and after, TikTok's time is running out. We need to know what the pickup looks like, what the lines look like, what early dismissals look like at the middle school and the elementary school today, now, or else you're not going to have a baseline. And I don't.
That's why I asked.
And we're running out of time here. We need to get a baseline.
We do
for these
have
things.
a comprehensive implementation plan that begins tomorrow. The first item is the follow-up phone call with Dr. Flew from the Korean Technical Center. One of the things that's in the first 3 weeks of the program is doing the pickup and drop-off analysis of that and car counting at the 3 elementary schools. So if this board passes this tonight, work starts tomorrow on that.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that. I didn't see any way we're capturing the staff feedback.
Staff feedback is critical. So in the implementation plan, there is, we are looking to collect feedback from students, parents, and staff. We've actually identified a variety of ways we're going to do that for the different groups. For example, we've got a captive audience when we have parent-teacher conferences, so we thought that one of the easiest ways to get feedback from parents would be to collect it when they come in for parent-teacher conferences. So we really looked for opportunities that we could maximize our feedback. We've got meetings with student government we're going to hit at the high school after the first month to get feedback. So we've really went through. Staff have been really great about being candid with us with concerns, and we'll continue to reach out, and that's actually built into the implementation plan as well.
I hear that. I want to see it, though, as a metric for evaluation. I'm concerned that it's still not up there. Is that not a valid metric?
No, it's something that we are.
Can we add it? I mean, I appreciate that's in the
can-
implementation plan. It's not a metric, and metrics are what we're saying is how we're going to measure it. If it's not there, it doesn't have the teeth that it needs to have.
It's on the implementation plan. It's part of the implementation plan, so we can add it to this slide as well.
Cost. We think we know how much it's going to cost. Are we not going to measure if we're off, if we're over, if we're under? Is that not a metric?
I think that's a valid point. We do anticipate it's going to be $120,000, and that's something we can certainly add to this slide.
Okay.
A year?
120. Yeah, it's going to be 120,000. It's the cost of the salary and benefits for the 2 bus drivers.
When I was at one of the feedback sessions, I heard you talking about that gap at the middle school in terms of when school ends and sports begin. And you had an idea. You said that once you were a coach and you used that as a study time. Great idea. I'd like to see, I am concerned about the middle schoolers' idle time between the end of their school day and the beginning of sports. So I actually don't know now. I know their day ends at 3, but when do sports start now for the middle
So I
school?
actually had a conversation, met with Mr. Fulgenetti about that, had a conversation with him the last 2 days as well. So the middle school, sorry, I've got that somewhere here in my notes. Middle school sports begin between 3:10 and 3:15 with practices, so that it takes about 10 to 15 minutes for them to go and get from their lockers and things like that to get ready and get out in the fields. The middle school administration has discussed a number of ways that they can address that. Currently, they've got 2 days a week that they've got homework club that's available after school, but that's something that they have been in discussion about.
So it is possible, or it will be done, that we will be able to move sports up to fill in some of that gap?
So again, we've got we've got nuances. So it depends on if we can get the coach there in time. If we can get the coach there at 2:40, then we have the opportunity to move the. If we can get the coach there by 2:55 or 3 o'clock, we have the opportunity to move this up. If we do not, then we've got contingencies for ensuring that the students are supervised during that time period.
Do we have to factor that into our budget, or is that already
not
covered?
factored into the budget because of the 10 minutes of less student face time that we've got staff that we would be able to have supervise the students.
Okay, so we can anticipate there will be added costs from that.
There's not going to be added costs for that.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said. So it's not factored in the budget because it's already covered.
That is correct. We're not changing the hours despite changing the amount of time that students are in the building.
Okay. And I think I asked this question before. I'm a little fuzzy on what the answer was. The cutting down the class passing time at the high school. From what I understand, it's what you already do when there's a delayed opening, a snow day.
That's correct. When we do modified schedules, we already shave passing time. Or when we have large assembly and we have to expand community period, that's one of the first things that goes is we shave the passing time between the classes. If
Students are chronically up to less than 1 minute late to classes, will they be penalized?
No. So one of the things is, we're going to continue to monitor and look at this. We don't anticipate, based on historical changes to our bell schedule, that this will be an issue for our students.
Okay. I just want to say that regardless of what happens, all feedback, negative or positive, is a gift. Hope you all embrace it as a challenge going forward, and I hope you embrace it with gusto and with transparency, or else all this good work will be tainted, and I'd hate to see that happen. That's it for my questions.
Susan, can I interrupt one second? Sure. And I apologize. I have a terrible cough, but I promised somebody in this community that I would be here even if I was on my deathbed, so I am here. I think there's probably one additional cost. I just want to make sure we're all thinking about it and that it doesn't come back as a gotcha last year and you guys didn't know or you didn't think of this. We're running 2 extra buses. We're going to have 2 extra bus drivers. I know we're not buying those buses because we have them already. We're just not trading them in. But there will be gas and maintenance costs for 2 extra buses. I don't think it's necessarily a huge number. It may even be built into the 120. But I think it's something we should just be aware of and acknowledge. There is slightly more money. I don't think it's a huge number, but let's not sugarcoat it.
That is correct. Those pieces would have to be in there as well. And also, we've had discussions, and we talked about one of our earlier meetings, where we would fit those 2 extra buses. We know where to fit the 2 drivers, but also our bus garage lot is getting very tight, and looking at, we have other opportunities around the district as well, but where would we put those 2 extra buses? And they're looking right now to see how they could fit them. Mr. Hearn's here, and I know they're looking to see how, by moving some of the vans and different pieces, on what they could possibly do to fit them on our current bus garage lot.
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask one really important question. When will this all be evaluated? Calendar, year, month?
So the board will get an update by Dr. Barczyk and myself after the first month. So that's the.
That was in the presentation. The planned updates were in the presentation.
Yes. So the first month, the board will get an update as to this, and then I believe there are 4 checkpoints throughout the school year, which ends in a May update, and then a final update the following school year as to the entire year in review.
Thank you. Okay, so let's see.
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions.
You have some questions. Okay, Chuck, go ahead.
So many options here. I just want you to touch upon the gym credits, because it was mentioned, TE was mentioned. We're not changing the way that our students are earning their credits.
That is correct. So we have Fitness for Athletes, which currently is a course that is built into our program of studies. It's been around for like 3 years or so. It provides flexibility for our athletes to be able, if they have a competition or if they have something, to be able to get out. The change to this would be we are specifically scheduling students into it during 8th period. Those students would be in the PE class when they don't have a competition, if they're out of season. When they're in season, if they have a conflict, if they've got, if they need to leave because of an early dismissal for a conflict, then they would be excused from and not have to make up that class. That is correct. We're not touching the way that we earn our credits. This is a flexible way for student athletes that need to get out for a competition to be able to get out.
And I guess the other thing that we would want to bring forward is if we see that it needs to be tweaked, we're not waiting until next year to tweak it.
No,
Right.
we are planning to be extremely responsive and make adjustments as things come up.
And we're seeing 3 updates and then an evaluation, not a fourth update, is that correct?
I believe that we've got 4 updates throughout the course of the year, starting with the first month, and then an evaluation, a full year-long evaluation that is September of the following
Okay, so
year.
you have 4 updates.
4 during the school year, and then
and
one
then
additional in the
followed by an
following September.
evaluation, which will be. Now, the metrics that we have up there, for instance, it's not just going to be the number of nurse visits. The number is important. It's why the children are there. That information may not be shared with us, but that information is going to the administration so they can see the impact that it's having on the visits, the social workers, the psychologists, those kind of things. We're not just measuring how often a child goes there. We're keeping the data on the effect that it's having, correct?
Yes, the asking of why is critical. And again, this is where this fits under the umbrella, though, of that wellness study. And you know, maybe what comes out of the wellness study is some discussions about looking at what type of dashboard and how are we as a district monitoring these pieces, aside from this sleep and this change in sleep. You know, we set up the wellness study this past year because we as a district were concerned. We were separate from sleep. We were concerned with what we were seeing with some of our students and wanted to make sure that we're really understanding the data. Once we see the data that we have gathered, those things that we can share publicly, those things that we can't share publicly, you know, once we've had an opportunity to see the data, we need to talk about how do we move forward and what are we doing to address that and monitor that. Yes, some of it ties directly into the sleep, but some of it's going to be separate because I think it's going to become good practice for us as a district to be monitoring this.
Correct. And we have that baseline data.
Yes.
Already. We log not only the visit, but we keep documentation on the whys.
We have a lot of that data, yes, but we will be able to see with the wellness study, we'll see a little bit more in detail next month what is that data and what we have and understand what's lacking in that data and what exists in that data.
If I may, very quickly, I think, Ken, the approach that you mentioned earlier, I think is important for everyone to understand that in the first year of a project like this, the qualitative data that you get from a focus group, qualitative data that you get from a self-report survey is extremely important. Rich data that tells a story, and how you link that up with other kinds of data, quantitative data, more discrete data points like Chuck's talking about, that's great. But I think in the first year of a program, I think the precedence or the priority is that richer qualitative data.
Andrew, thank you for that. So I'm mindful that it's 8:59, and we talked earlier about an hour or so ago about having our students kind of end their evenings at 9 o'clock, and we have a number of students in the room.
A board, I didn't think of that. We should have a discussion about board meetings
So
ending by
I'm just
9.
mindful
That's
that we have
wonderful.
students in the audience, and, you know, in mindful of their wellness and yet their, you know, obvious commitment to being here and hearing our discussion. And we had a really full, robust conversation last month. I don't want to stem anybody's conversation right now, but I would just, you know, say we did talk about this pretty fully last month. And so if there's more or new information that you'd like to, you know, that we'd like to add tonight to the conversation before we take the vote, you know, that's great. But I think anybody who wants to know how we feel could probably look at last month's meeting, and they would have a pretty good sense of, you know, where we were. And that was the reason that I took the time to make sure Sarah and Patty had an opportunity to go first, because they weren't able to be with us last month. So with that, I will open it for any, you know, board discussion if we, you know, need to engage in that. Andrew?
Very quickly, because I realize the time here. Patty, I want to respond to your points that you made earlier about international comparisons. This is something that I have studied, and I can tell you that one of the issues with those international comparisons, like PISA, TIMSS, PEARLS, SACMEC, those things, is that they take aggregate data. So OECD actually did a study where they took the 5 very highest performing school districts in the country. And those school districts are as good, if not better, than any other school organization in the world. So, in other words, our highest performing schools in the U.S. are as good, if not better, than anywhere else in the world in terms of those comparisons by what they measure, right? We know that they don't really, they're not capturing everything that's good about a school, right? So I just wanted to point that out, and I'm sure that if Radnor had participated in that study, the Test for School study, I'm sure that we would be right up there, right? I just want to say that. Also, though, I think that giving more time for kids to sleep, there's plenty of evidence to show that that is actually going to improve their performance. All the data points in that direction. So I just wanted to mention that. And finally, in many of those countries, they prioritize instructional time, right, like you said, but they also have a trade-off there of less extracurricular time. So, and if you've read on it, and I'm sure you have, that is a trade-off that is made, right? So those are just a few points I wanted to add to the discussion.
Okay, do we have?
Yes, I'd like to. I had such a fun time speaking for an hour last week. I thought I'd do it again.
Just remind you, we have students with the, no, go
I
ahead,
have two
Mike,
kids
of
of my
course.
own. I mean, last week it was like, my kids' experience don't count.
No, by all means, share.
So I'm going to state for the record again that I like to sleep. I like sleep. I like sleep. I wish I could sleep more. I'm not anti-sleep. I'm not anti-science. Said it last week. I'm going to say it again. I know it's been said about me since last week. It's going to be said about me in the coming months because this is an election year. I really regret that this has been pushed during an election year through no fault of, Super Ken or Principal Bechtold. Wasn't their decision. As most everyone knows, I went to Radnor High when school started at 7:35. I did go to a private school for a little bit of a time, 4th grade. I rode the bus from the middle school to Garrett Hills, switched buses, finished the ride to Front Central. So I know what the private school bus ride is like, and a friend of mine's kid actually does it right now. It's the same route. I have 2 kids in Radnor, so this is not an academic exercise for me. My kids will be directly affected by the time change. For my oldest, if her scheduling works out and the Fitness for Athletes thing works for her, there are days she's going to be going to school at 8:30 and she'll be done by 1:30. Most days she'll be done by 2:30. So if I vote no on this, I have to go home to a 16-year-old daughter, and hell hath no fury like the wrath of a 16-year-old daughter, My other daughter's a lacrosse player, and she's undecided on a fall sport, so she'll be a freshman coming this fall, and if she says to that survey undecided, and then she plays a fall sport, and then, the freshmen, they do have away games. The JVs all have away games. Are we going to put all of the athletes into Fitness for Athletes? Are they going to miss class time? Are they going to miss more class time? I mean, I asked that last month, and I know Mike Friel has been making this ridiculous Herculean effort to track how many minutes people have missed. Are they going to miss more? The RTEA, I've talked to some of those folks, and they're pretty concerned about kids missing the class time that they miss now, and they don't want to miss any more class time, but if we move back, they're going to miss more. The JV and the freshman team, if they're not scheduled for that Fitness for Athletes in the back end. I had other random questions that were brought on by reading the various PowerPoints, the sleep webpage, the conversations with parents, kids. They don't come. I mean, I love you all when you show up, and then everybody stands up in their support of this thing, but, I could fill this room with people that are against it too, so it's impressive, but, again, this has happened a year ago when you guys brought up another thing, like if you're not in the room, you don't count. If you're watching on TV, just let you know. So, not to be a jerk, but, so. Yep, if it's that important and you don't show up, you don't count. That's what they just said. So you're ignorant, and I'm mean. So there you go. Yeah, don't count. So the initial recommendation said that ending the elementary school at 3:45 was too late and a bad thing based on teacher and parent feedback. Now we're ending the elementary schools at 3:40, but that's okay. I mean, the last kid dropped off a bus from elementary school will be 4:30 if all goes well. That's only 7 minutes later than it is now, but it's 4:30. It's really late, and that's all if all goes well traffic-wise. which, traffic in Radnor. If the unassailable science recommends that elementary kids should start school earlier, shouldn't we start elementary kids earlier? I know one presentation says elementary kids would be waiting in the dark for a bus. I've never seen an elementary bus stop without multiple parents there the entire time. I mean, there are no elementary kids waiting for a bus without parents. And maybe fifth graders. Then the last line on that slide says that feedback says ending at 3:45 was too late. And here we're saying that ending at 3:40 is okay. I mean, what? You can't say that 3:45 is too late, but 3:40 is okay. The same with the middle school. The science that everybody keeps beating us over the head with says that, they need to start later too. And we're going backward. If I'm going to truncate a lot of what I have to say because you guys have been talking about it, the baseline data. We haven't been collecting it all year, so now we're collecting 1 month's worth of baseline data, which is invalid when you're going to compare it to a full year. And a lot of this metric stuff is self-reporting. A lot of the kids that I know that aren't in favor of the late start never took the surveys because, like people have said, they never thought it would go through. Why are we in a rush to do this first before watching somebody else do it? Phoenixville's going to start it next year. Why don't we see what kind of problems they have and study it for a year? Radnor, we used to do this. We used to be a quick second on everything. Let somebody else screw it up first and learn from their mistakes. Let's not be the guinea pigs here. And if you really believe in the science as much as everyone says you do, and I know there's a lot of true believers out there, how much is your kid's health worth? We should be doing the flip or studying a way to do a concurrent start for everybody in the district. Because if you believe the rhetoric that I've heard and we're being beat on with, you're literally hurting the 2,400 kids to help 1,200 kids. We can find the money to do the flip or concurrent start if we take the time to plan it and not try and rush it in 99 days. I say 99 days because the schedules need to be done for the kids by August 1, which is 99 days for tonight. The one thing that frustrates people in Radnor, and I've lived here since 1984, is the tendency to have a great idea to fix a need, then we, either the Board of Commissioners or this board, do it halfway and cheap out. The final recommendation is the final mostly because of the cost, if you read between the lines. I believe that if something is worth doing, let's do it right. The science that we're beat over the head with constantly says, do the flip to benefit the most kids, and we're not. And if we push this off a year, we can plan to budget the money. I think we either do it right or we don't do it. Now, I could go on with more points, but I know that some board members are anxious to call the vote and pass this, so I now pass this off to my other board members to rebut everything I have said. I yield my time.
Do we have other board comment?
Oh, I can rebut.
Oh, okay.
And Mike is right. In the past, we were a quick second.
Just stop there.
Yeah, just stop there. No, we were. But I believe that there are times, and this being one of them, that we shouldn't wait, okay? I've attended many meetings about this with many different people. I traveled up to Harrisburg. I went to meet with different representatives, different kind of things like this, okay? And I think I can agree with Mike that maybe we should flip, and maybe that's something that might happen after we've done this for a year when we do our evaluation. The middle school, maybe we should push that back, and maybe we will be able to do that as we're fixing things. This afternoon, or at the beginning of the meeting, I was discussing that Ken here is a clock repairman. We have a clock that we need to repair. We turn this a little bit, something happens over here. That has to be adjusted. These are things that you're going to have to be able to do, okay? And I personally believe that we can do this. I do actually have trust, and I believe in trust. I believe in faith, and I have faith in you, and I have trust in the administration that we'll be able to move this forward. That said, we need to find out exactly what's happened, transparency. We're going to have the information. A lot of this information we already do have, except for the traffic piece that you're going to, and the drop-offs and the pickups at the elementaries and things like that. That's information that we're going to get. Many of these other things, you may not have it readily available, but we can pull it out for the entire year, is it? Yeah, right? So sometimes you have to be first. And it's much easier to be a quick second. I agree with you. And a lot of this was monetary. I mean, part of the discussion that I had, if we do add a couple more buses, could we push the middle school back to 8 o'clock? Maybe that's something that we consider as we move forward. So I'm here in support of it. As far as my experiences as a teacher, as a parent, as a special education teacher, sleep is something that really does affect the students. When my students, and Miss Lydia here will testify to this, when my students came in and they did not get a good night's sleep, that was a horrific day for everyone involved. So sleep is critical, and we're finding that out. My father told, this is how we prepared, or I prepared for assessments or tests. I got a good night's sleep. I would study for a little bit, but then I need to remember. I need to refresh. Your memories become deeper, my opinion, or I've read different places. When you sleep, that's when you begin the processing. That's when the things can go a little bit deeper. And we're robbing sometimes our kids that opportunity when they benefited the most. You're beginning to wake up. I don't know how many of you are like me, where sometimes the best sleep that you're getting is when you're supposed to be awake at the beginning of the day, and you just fall back asleep again. Well, you need that sleep, and we're telling our kids to get up. And in a sense, we are coddling the kids. We're saying we're going to help you get through this adolescent period with this circadian rhythm, okay? We're going to help you get through this, and we're doing it for their wellness. And the homework, I'm with you. What's the purpose of homework? I don't think we've established that. And we need to look at homework. We need to look at when homework can be submitted. We need to look at when tests are scheduled so our kids don't have 3 or 4 tests the same day. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of moving parts in this. So as a clockmaker says, we have to look at all this at the same time. And I think we can keep our schedule on time.
While the mic's on. Thank you, Chuck. And Mike, I think we had an opportunity last month to, I had an opportunity to respond to a lot of questions. And, I want you to know, and I want the community members to know that, and our staff and our parents that have had questions and concerns. That's why we created that website as well. The website was an opportunity for people just to write so that those who can't attend and can share that. And we have received, concerns from that. And that's what prompted us to do the frequently asked questions. We sent out to our entire community last week, an extended version of those questions based on those emails. So trying to give our community as many opportunities to come out. So I won't go through each thing. I think we had an opportunity last month to do that. But I will say that the only piece I would disagree with tonight on is I don't know that it's fair to say that we're the first. While we may in this area, be moving to an 8:30 start time with this proposal, and other districts in the area have done, a 20-minute push. The reality is that this is something that is very unique to each district, and each district has individual constraints. But I would say when you look nationally at this issue and what has taken place nationally, I mean, there are communities just like this community, Wilton, Connecticut, for one, that when we tried to reach out to them when they changed their start time many years ago, we had troubles finding administrators who were around when they made that decision. So there were a lot of communities that we were able to look at that have done this already. So I don't mean to undercut us as being the first, but nationally.
He said first.
In the south, in this region, actually hitting the 8:30, hitting the 8:30 as opposed to pushing it. But the reality is, nationally, we had a lot to draw upon nationally as well.
Did anybody look at where it failed and went back? I know there are a bunch of schools that have done it, and it's failed horribly. Did anybody look at that and figure out why?
Yeah. We actually purposely set out to look for that, and it was hard to find. And the reason it's so hard to find is because...
I found a bunch.
Yeah, no, we found a bunch, and we asked all of our researchers, we specifically had asked Dr. Owens, share this with us. What do you know about the research that's out there? The reason it is hard to find, though, because there's a lot more research about making the change. It's hard to find because this issue comes down to an individual issue, district by district, about the obstacles. So the obstacles in one particular district become the challenges to this topic. There was a district, in the South, I forget off the top of my head in the research, that did the flip. Started their elementary earlier. Sadly, a student was hit in the morning, being out at a bus stop, and they immediately switched back. There are places where there was a district that looked at the studies, and it was, I believe this one was in upstate New York, where they made the change and they felt the following year kids were 2 years later, they felt kids were starting to stay up later. So they started to contemplate and look to make the change back. We also found other data to show some, that where that was being challenged as well. So we looked hard to find that data and look at those studies as well. And the committee itself, the committee was set up with people who, first and foremost, were just open to this topic. Then people were selected who leaned against it and people who leaned in favor of it, to try to have that balance in the committee as well.
Just to get back, because you had talked about, quick second, when we say that historically for Radnor, and I know it's great for us to go beyond our borders, but we're basically talking about Lower Merion, TE, and Radnor. Okay.
Do we have other board comment?
Yeah, I do want to just say, sorry? Okay. I'm going to be really brief because I made my statement really last month. I do want to, again, acknowledge the people that worked on the sleep committee and the administrators who have held countless meetings and really have wrestled with addressing concerns that have come up over a two-year period, really. And so I think it's just really important to say thank you to people who've put so much work into this. I am voting in favor of this, which I've pretty much been in favor of all along this process. For me, the research on this is compelling. And I also want to acknowledge the community, because I think what we've seen happen here in Radnor, my opinion, is that we've seen people working together to wrestle with a problem, but for the absolute right reason, which is to do the best thing for the students in our community. So what I want to acknowledge, too, is the community working together in the best interest of our students. And so, again, I want to thank, it sounds like the sleep committee is still enlisted. I don't know if they knew they were signing up for 3 years' worth of work, but we really do appreciate it.
Susan, may I just say something?
Yeah,
Because
no.
Lydia brought up a really interesting point. And one of the things that I've noted as we've gone through this process and that has struck me, is how the critical skills with which we must equip our students for future success have been on display so vividly. I mean, we're talking about a lot of things that have gone into this process, but that's something that's really struck me, because this initiative was a model of how critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, curiosity, adaptation, synthesizing, analyzing information, and more has resulted in a potential solution to a complex real-world problem, thanks to the gritty side-by-side teamwork of many of our administrative departments, staff, parents, students, community members, and others. So on the one hand, if significantly raising the bar of student health and well-being wasn't enough, what I hope doesn't get lost on everyone is that we have also modeled and employed these must-have skills that our students need to survive and thrive in real time. And to me, that's also a really great outcome for our students. So it may not live up to the outcome of health and well-being, which of course is very important, But for whatever reason, what Lydia said also really resonated in me as I thought back about how this process has unfolded. And I want to thank you for being leaders in that way, because there were so many different people in our community who worked together using those very skills, not operating in silo, but working together and exercising those vital skills that we need to imbue in our students in order for them to be successful in their post-secondary lives. So I wanted to say thank you for that too.
Thank you, Amy. Andrew? Julia?
I'm finished, thank you.
Okay, Andrew?
I think I've also said plenty. During our last meeting, I just said thank you to the committee for doing such an excellent job. I completely agree with what Lydia said, that this is pretty inspiring effort by the community to come together to solve an issue, or at least propose a good solution to an issue. Couple things for the record. Number one, I'm fully committed to looking at this as something that we do and to monitor and evaluate it. And that's why I really appreciate in Dan's presentation where it says implementation continued. Toward the bottom of the page, it says here are 4 times that we're going to look at this. We're going to take a cold look at this and see how it's working. And I think we all want a W here. I don't think anyone's looking for an L. We want this to work, and we're going to try to make it work. And if it works out to not really be the best thing for our community, I think we're all willing to take a look at that and consider that. But I think that that this is a kind of an inspiring thing to do. I mean, it's very difficult to really move the needle on something as let's say entrenched as this, an entrenched pattern like this. So. Congratulations all around, I suppose. One final point, actually, is that I think Mike's point about the middle school start time, it is something that is, I think, worth noting, and I think it's something worth looking at down the road. You know, if we're applying the logic that adolescents need more sleep, then why wouldn't that apply to middle school students? They are adolescents, so all the biological reasons why adolescents need sleep apply to 13-year-olds as well as 16, 17-year-olds. So, but those are my final thoughts. Thanks.
Okay. Sure.
This is a little nitpicky of me, but I asked this many, many times. Who's recommending this? Is this recommendation coming? And if it is coming from the Sleep Study Committee, I would recommend that we put that in the agenda so that
It's in the agenda.
Where?
It says that the board approves the recommendation from the Sleep and School Start Time Committee.
Who's recommending it? The Sleep Study Commission is recommending it?
No, the recommended action on our agenda is that the board approve the recommendation from the Sleep and School Start Time Committee. They gave us a recommendation, and the recommended action on here.
Yeah, okay. I get
So
that.
that's why I
But-
asked for, that's why we started the, no, Chuck, it's a good point.
Yeah.
But it's the reason that I started the whole entire conversation. Actually, Dan didn't even get up and start his presentation until I entertained a motion and a second to consider this recommended action of approving the recommendation from the Sleep and Start Time Committee.
So it's actually recommended by, we approve the recommendation from the Sleep
School and
School Start
Sleep and School Start Time Committee. Yep.
Okay, but it's recommended by them.
Yes, when it says recommended action. the
Yeah,
way
that's
in a-
confusing for me,
Well,
because what
because
we did in the
agendas
past
are-
was who recommends the different, because it could be an administrative recommendation.
Well, I think it's an administrative recommendation that came.
See, you think it's an administrative recommendation.
Right.
I do
Because the
not.
administrators led the Sleep and School Start Time Committee.
Hang on a second, no.
See, that's the difference.
Agendas, Chuck,
There's confusion here even at our board level.
no, there's not confusion for me.
Well, I'm seeing
The
it
way
differently
I'm just gonna
than
try to
Lydia's
explain.
seeing it.
The way agendas are written is that there's a recommended action. And
By whom?
By our agenda, whether it's, so, it
So-
depends on who you think writes our agenda. The superintendent writes our
Well,
agenda.
The superintendent, the board president by policy, set the agenda.
We set the agenda.
Set the agenda, excuse me, by policy. We set the agenda. And yes, this is a recommendation that is coming from our Sleep and School Start Time Committee with the full support of the administration. So as they have made that recommendation coming forward, administratively, we concur and agree with this recommendation and have moved it forward to the board.
So then I would recommend that you put that in there. I'd just like to see it in there. We had a committee that worked on it for a couple of years. I would like to see it in there that it was recommended by them. You guys then took their recommendation, and now you are recommending it to us.
Yeah, well, I think we were pretty clear with that last month as well, administratively sharing that this was the administrative recommendation to adopt this. You know, out of all the models, this was the model that administratively, because one of the things we shared last month was the challenge we had with the committee was the committee was very split at one point in looking at some of those options, and administratively, you know, where we stepped in and where we felt there was guidance. So certainly we can look to.
So you looked at this, and then this is a recommendation by the administration.
Correct.
Like Lydia had said, to follow the recommendation of the sleep committee.
Correct. And it was my recommendation to bring the Sleep and School Start Time Committee to this meeting last month, and that's why we had a panel of committee members last month who presented. So it's worded this way because it was the panel last month of committee that brought this forward and was answering all the questions and presenting.
I would just prefer to, well, we can leave it like that, but just understanding that you looked at their recommendation and you're recommending to us.
I just briefly looked at it, honestly. No, I'm kidding.
Chuck, what I'd like to clarify, so this is a function of how
Yes.
board docs is structured.
Yes.
The Sleep Start, the committee includes, you know, Super Bachelor and Principal Bechtold and
Yeah, but
Tony.
They're just on the committee. Correct. But I'm trying to give a little credit to the people that, everybody out there that worked on it, that's all.
All right, thank you. So I'd like to kind of just wrap things up by, yes, thanking the committee, but I actually want to thank Mike and Patty. You brought forth, you're representing people who are not here tonight, and those voices do matter. We have seen those emails, we have seen those concerns, and they are valid and they are real. And as I said last month, I did not think this would be a unanimous vote, and I don't think we have to have a unanimous vote to be able to take a vote and move forward. It's, Ken's line, we can disagree but not be disagreeable. And I think that this is going to be one of those instances where we're going to demonstrate to everyone that we can disagree and not be disagreeable. But I want to thank you. You guys both asked really hard and good questions tonight. One of the things I spoke to Dan earlier today, and one of the things I said to him was that what I've been impressed by is that the committee worked the problem. It's a line from Apollo 13. And I believe that they will continue to work the problem. There will be problems that will come up. Chuck refers to it as, Ken tinkering with the gears of a clock. I refer to it as you'll work the problem. I'm really happy to hear Julia ask the question that the committee's going to continue to be constituted and will continue to assist the administration and the district in working the problems. And you guys asked really good, important things. And Mike, to your point, we may come to a place very quickly where we do a flip, as you're suggesting. That may come very quickly. Patty, one of the things you said that really resonated for me is about technology. Had the process of interviewing someone yesterday, and they talked about they take their children's phones from them at night and charge them in the parent bedroom. In voting for this tonight, one of the things I will challenge all parents to do is do not allow your children to have their electronics in their rooms at night. They need a break from themselves. They need a break from the drama of being teenagers. They need a break from the blue light of their phones. It's okay to say no to your kids. You may not have your computer in your room and be on it all night long, or your phone in your room all night long. When we're talking about student wellness, that's one of the things that really resonates for me about student wellness. Having raised 3 children who I did not allow them to have a phone or a computer in their room their entire time they lived in my house. When they left for college, it was a different, the rules changed. But I stood by that, and I still stand by that. And Patty, when you mentioned that about blue light and technology, it really, really resonated for me. That's another thing that we can do as a community and as parents and support each other in parenting our teenagers, our middle schoolers, our elementary school kids in ways that are better for them, healthier for them. There's been a lot of talk in the school's wellness study and in this sleep conversation about those other things that we can do, those healthy sleep habits. So, you know, that's my plug for something that I do sincerely believe. It does address something that Patty brought forth as a concern that I can speak to from personal experience. It makes a difference for kids. And I thank all of you, and I look forward to us, you know, taking this vote, and then we'll move forward. So with that, I will say, let me just read the agenda item, that the board approves the recommendation from the Sleep and School Start Time Committee to change the start and end times for all buildings effective in the 2019-2020 school year, as shown below, with the high school having a start time of 8:30 and an end time of 3:10, the middle school having a start time of 7:50 a.m. and an end time of 2:40 p.m., and elementary schools having a start time of 9:07 a.m. with an end time of 3:40 p.m. And all those in favor, please raise your hand and say aye. Aye. And the nays? The motion passes 7-2. Thank you all very much. So now we will continue on with our agenda. Our next item is 8.2. A request to approve the Delaware County Intermediate Unit General Operating Budget for 2019-2020. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
And a second?
Second.
Okay.
I think I need to read it.
You do.
Because you're doing a roll call.
Oh, great. Thank you, Patty.
That the board approve the Delaware County Intermediate Unit General Operating Budget for the 2019-2020 school year in the amount of $9,343,629, with Radnor Township School District's share as approved in the amount of $80,581.48.
Mr. Babson.
Aye.
Mrs. Bonenberger.
Aye.
Mrs. Booker.
Aye.
Mrs. Dunn.
Aye.
Mrs. Goldman. Aye. Mr. Miller.
Aye.
Mr. Madden.
Aye.
Ms. Solomon.
As an employee of the institution, I abstain from the vote.
Ms. Stern.
Aye. Okay, great. Now we're going to move on to our consent agenda. Although board action is required, it is generally unnecessary to hold discussion on these items. With the consent of all board members, they are therefore grouped and approval is given in one motion. In the event a board member wants to discuss any item, the board president will move it to an appropriate item to place on the agenda. So before I accept a motion, is there any items that people would like to pull?
10.4.
Right.
Okay, we're going to pull 10.4. Any other items that to be pulled? Okay, so I will entertain a motion to accept agenda items 9.13.1 with the exception of item 10.4. May I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Lydia, all those in favor? Okay, that motion passes 9-0. And then Mike, 10.4 that you pulled.
I'm pulling 10.4 so that we can table this till next month while the contract's being reviewed by our attorneys.
Great. I'll have a motion to table 10.4.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? So motion to table item 10.4 is approved. And moving on to, I believe we are all the way up to reports from board liaisons. Do we have a report from Delaware County Community College?
Yes, the liaison committee for Delaware County Community College met on Wednesday, April 3rd. We had a short meeting, but there is a few items that I want to make everyone aware of. Firstly, there will be a 1% increase for the sponsoring school districts towards next year's budget for the community college. We will be voting on that next month, so you will see those actual numbers reflected in the information that you get in your packet for next month's business meeting. And I think I've said this before, but the community college enrollment actually moves with the economy. So when you have a strong economy, which means low unemployment, the enrollment is down at the community college. So that is something they are experiencing right now. However, they have a program called dual enrollment, which allows high school students to gain credits at the community college while still in high school. And the enrollment for that program is up considerably. And then along with just a report on that, the other major development really is that the community college is in negotiations to purchase the Pendergast High School property. So that's a building that's now vacant because they combined two parochial high schools, and so it is yet to be determined what will happen with that negotiation. But there is interest in that because for the dual enrollment program, the students mainly come from Upper Darby, the William Penn School District, and then from Chester Upland. So geographically, that would be very convenient for those students if that were to transpire.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a report from the DCIU?
Nothing related to Radnor.
Okay. A report from Federal Relations Network. Andrew?
Super quick. So the NSBA conference was the last weekend of March. I did not participate because the theme of the conference overlapped a lot with the FRN conference that I attended at the end of January, although I think Amy and Lydia attended, and Chuck as well, and positive reviews all around for that. So that's all I have about FRN.
Thank you. And Delaware County School Board's Legislative Council. Amy?
Yes, the council met on Wednesday, April 10th, and we had a lengthy agenda that began with a Skype conference about the authorization and operation of charter schools with Sharon Ward, the policy director for the School District of Philadelphia. We covered the latest legislative happenings in Harrisburg and Washington, including the disappointing news that Senator Almond, who had been poised to take on the chairmanship of the Senate Education Committee, has moved up to Senate leadership ranks and is now not likely to be the education chair, and he was a public education proponent, so that was a little disappointing. We talked about Pennsylvania education legislation that's on the move. Senator Killian, one of our local senators, has a bill that passed the Senate 45-0 at the end of March and is now in the House. It would require mandatory training of high school students in CPR. And we also discussed the very important recently introduced bipartisan U.S. House legislation, H.R. 878, that calls for full funding of the Individuals with Disabilities Act. The federal government had promised to fund IDEA at 40% in 1975 when it was first passed, and that's never happened. And today the government is still only footing the bill at about 14.7% when it comes to special education costs. So a bipartisan companion bill to this House bill has also been introduced in the U.S. Senate. And last but not least, we are really hoping to have as many of our school board members and administrators attend our annual Delaware County School Board's Legislative Council Breakfast that's being held on Friday, May 17th from 7:30 to 9 a.m. at the DCIU. I think you all received invitations to that. The key issue for the breakfast is cyber charter funding reform, and you'll hear from Dr. Bertrando, the superintendent of the Garnet Valley School District, about their recently implemented e-learning program, and Susan Spica, the director of Education Voters of PA, who just issued a report on cyber charter funding. Our committee is talking about bringing up next month 2 draft board resolutions on this issue that are being passed by boards around the region and throughout the state, so we hope you'll take advantage of this breakfast to learn more about the topic in preparation for our conversation here in Radnor about it. As far as the breakfast goes, if you have an RSVP to Teresa at the DCIU, please let her or me know as soon as possible if you can make it. And our next council meeting will be held on Wednesday, May 8th.
Thank you. PSBA, Sarah.
I apologize. I actually don't have an update for PSBA this month.
Okay. So no report. All right. Parks and Rec. That would be Andrew or Chuck.
Sure. Quick report. So at Parks and Rec, a couple of district-related items. So first of all, the township adopted the lease addendum agreement that was put forward. They approved legislation to purchase the comfort station as well at Elmwood Park. So the finish or completion date for that comfort station should be late fall. A purchase order has actually already been made, so that relates to school district property. Also at Odoricio Park, there's been some deliberation about a mountain bike trail there. We own about 40% of that park, about 9.5 acres out of 24.5 acres or 24 something acres. So, it is relevant to the district, but the land that we own is actually not really implicated in those plans, so it's not directly related, but it's something on our radar. And other business has been sort of put off till the next month's meeting. Thanks.
Great. Ref and Radnor Alumni Council. Mike?
Okay, so the monthly update for the April for the Radnor Educational Foundation and Radnor Alumni Association. I got nothing.
Okay, got it. Radnor High School Scholarship Fund. Julia?
On Sunday, May 5th, will be the annual kitchen tour. Tickets can be purchased at rtsd.org. Go through that site for the link. $35 for a ticket donation purchased ahead of time from 1 to 5 p.m. Benefits the class of 2019, and they're looking for volunteers.
Great. Radnor Page. Sarah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. And I want to thank Amy. I knew there was something for PSBA, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm not feeling well and I forgot it. April 29th is actually Advocacy Day. I think there is still time if you'd like to go to Harrisburg and meet with our legislative representatives to register with that through PSBA. It's on the registration's on the website, and we've gotten emails about it. If anybody needs a link, let me know, and I will get it to you if you're having trouble finding it. Radnor Page, I had my first meeting with the group in March, on March 13th. It was mostly just a meet and greet. I would put in a plug that if you have gifted children in the district and would like to get involved in Page, I'm sure they're looking for more members and would be happy to have your involvement.
Thank you. Radnor Committee for Special Education. Chuck?
Yes, the Radnor Committee for Special Education will meet Friday, April 26th. Also tomorrow, April 27th, there will be a meeting from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. Parent information session called Supporting All Students. It will be held at the Radnor Middle School. Jenny Lesage, Director of Special Education, George Regal, Assistant Director of Special Education, have invited Radnor Township School District parents and guardians to learn more about the special education programs that are in Radnor Township School Districts. Guests will include Dr. Shiroff, excuse me for my lack of pronunciations, social workers, Christine Culp and Kira Evans, special education emotional support teacher, Amy Glency, and inclusion coach, Rachel Lewis. Let's see, the full information has been posted on the district's website. Pre-registration is recommended.
Thank you. Okay, I have one item for new business. It's quick. We neglected to pull from the consent agenda item 10.1, which was the minutes for last month's meeting. We need to make a slight modification on last month's meeting minutes, that on those minutes, item 10.2, we took a vote, an appointment of, we had a motion to table the appointment to the DCIU Board of Directors. And the way that the minutes read, it says that we had 7 ayes, no nays, and then it says the nays carried 7-0. So we'd like to strike the line that says nays 7-0. So with that amendment to the minutes of last month, I'll entertain a motion to enter.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you so much. Do we have any other new business?
Yeah, I just want to, first of all, thank the district for sending me and Ms. Goldman and Mr. Madden to the National School Boards Association convention, which was in Philadelphia, I think, for the first time in the past 25 years. And I want to report back to you that during the keynote address on the first day, The president of the National School Boards Association, basically his biggest message to school board members across the country was to push for getting funding for IDEA, which when they passed that legislation, which Ms. Goldman mentioned earlier tonight, they promised funding at a 40% level. IDEA is what we should do. It's the right thing to do. It's helping educate kids with significant disabilities or mild disabilities, and it's very expensive work. And the federal government said we'll pay 40% of it, and they have never lived up to that. Most people do not know that. They right now pay 14%. They've never, I believe, funded it any higher than 16%. And so that's a travesty. So that leaves it to local communities to fund the bill of what we should do as a country for our citizens. And so that was his main message to all school board members across this country, was to make sure that that is funded properly, because that money that is not being given to us for what we should do and what is federal law is now taking away programs from our regular kids, because it has to come from our local money. And so that is just wrong, and it's something that needs to be corrected. And so I'm bringing that message back from you to you as one of the strongest things that I heard at the convention, is that something that we should all work towards, because that's the right thing.
Okay, any other new?
I had one thing, I apologize. I just, we don't have a liaison to the ABC House, so they sometimes get missed in various announcements, and I know that it is in our wonderful Radnor Reader, but if anybody else is like me, spring is so busy and it's easy to miss these announcements. So I just wanted to point out that the fundraiser for the ABC House is on Friday, May 10th, from 6:30 to 9:30. If you go to your latest, it's actually probably in the last few, but certainly the most recent Radnor Reader, there's a link to the invitation, and you can buy your tickets in advance or at the door. Thanks.
Thanks for that plug, Sarah. Okay, so for board announcements, our next round of meetings, Government Relations and Communications Committee meeting, a Facilities Committee meeting of the whole board, and a special board meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 7th, beginning at 5 p.m. in the Administration Building of the Ground Floor Conference Room. The next week, Tuesday, May 14th, beginning at 5 p.m., we have a Curriculum Committee meeting, Policy Committee meeting, and then our next regular board business meeting will be Tuesday, May 28th at 7 p.m. here in the Radnor Shire Building. Okay, so now we'll entertain our second round of public comment. Citizens are encouraged to address the board at this time to comment on matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before the board. Speakers are requested respectfully to avoid redundancy and to limit their comments to issues for which there was not previous opportunity to offer remarks. Again, please sign your name in at the back of the room. Clearly state your name, and please limit your comments to not more than 4 minutes as per Board Policy 006. And should you be unable to attend this board meeting, you may submit your comment by email to boardcomments@rtsd.org or in writing to Mr. Michael Petiti, RTSD 135 South Wayne Avenue, Wayne, Pennsylvania. Do we have any public comment? Welcome. Welcome, Mr. Wood.
How's everybody doing tonight? I figured I'll see if we can stay past 10. Mrs. Booker mentioned...
Why would you do that to us?
I don't know. Mrs. Booker mentioned tonight about labor contracts and the impact on labor contracts, and RTA's position is it does have an impact on labor contracts, and we'll work with the district to try and solve that problem. But it definitely does, in our opinion, have an impact on labor contracts. The second thing that occurred to me tonight is the buses are being mentioned at $120,000 as the total cost, but how does the bus get replaced that you're not trading in this year? To me, it just occurs that that's going to cost you some money in the long run. So it's just something to think about as you move forward. How are you going to replace that bus that's now two additional buses, as well as parking it and the gas and all that stuff for it? And the final thing is a personal thing that my wife and I would be perfectly willing, on behalf of Earth Day and Earth Week, to purchase everyone on the board and in the administrative staff reusable water bottles. They may say something you may not approve of on them, but we will purchase one for you so at board meetings you don't have to drink out of plastic bottles, which is a data-driven decision as you made tonight. Plastic is really bad. It's floating around in our air, and by doing that, you're adding to our issue. So we would be perfectly willing to do that for you. and I'll bring them next month. Thank you. Yeah, and some. I will mention that some board members do have reusable bottles and have had them in the past. So we have Mr. Miller over there and Mrs. Stern have them. So thank you very much. Yeah, some people have had them in the past, and they just don't have them tonight. But I thought it's worth mentioning.
Thank you for your generosity. Is there any other board comment? Okay. So seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I
Second.
just did. Any more public comment?
She meant public comment.
So
but
we've
she
made
meant public
we've made
comment.
a motion to adjourn. It's been seconded.
And seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.